across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, there you are. I'm back. Good afternoon and welcome to Drive Time right here on Talk. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan. Remember me? And I'll be your host for 3 powerhouse hours of news, views and topical debate all the way to 7 o'clock. Get on the show, get on the phone and call me on 0344 499 1000. Or you can WhatsApp voice note me on the same number and I promise to play your message out. It is Monday, June the 8th. Here's what's coming up. Well, as I say, I've been away for a week in Greece, since you ask. And so I've been watching this chaos from abroad, from afar, if you like. And there's one scandal, as I was just saying to Ian Collins, that leaps out and kicks you in the face. We all know there is a thing going on. It is two-tier policing. It is why Henry Novak died. It's as simple as that. He was the victim of anti-white racism. We all know that. We know there's two-tier policing. We know that the Met Police have spent £5 million on DEI. We know that Hampshire Police, the force responsible for the death of Henry Novak, has spent £850,000 on equality training, diversity training. Today, we learn, we're going to talk about this in just a little while, that police have hired £75,000 a year diversity officers, even after the Henry Novak scandal, while crime continues to soar. They just will not learn. We know it. It is palpable. We know that there is two-tier policing in this country. And we cry out to our Prime Minister, we cry out to the police and we say, what are you going to do about this unfairness? What are you going to do about the fact that the police are more interested in racism than rape and murder? What are you going to do about the fact that the police instantly favour people of colour over white people, having overcompensated for the Stephen Lawrence scandal? That's what's going on. What are you going to do about it? And they turn round and they look us in the face and they say, no, there is no such thing as two-tier policing. We police without fear or favour. No, you bloody well don't. You police with sheer terror over the possibility of being accused of racism. You're terrified of being accused of racism. That's your number one fear. You don't police without fear, and you do police with favour because you favour anyone that isn't white. And then they turn round to us and they say, no, 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 you're wrong. Two-tier policing doesn't exist. Let me tell you, it's going to be the death of this government. It's going to be the death, the political death at least, of Keir Starmer. You cannot do this. You are gaslighting us. You're telling us that something doesn't exist when we know that it does, and we're not going to take it. We're just not going to take it. So we're going to concentrate on this scandal throughout the show. We'll also talk about banknotes, the fact that Winston Churchill, our greatest war leader, probably our greatest ever leader, is going to be replaced on banknotes by bumblebees. What serious nation does that? Why are we culturally ashamed of our glorious history? And we're going to talk about the BBC, which is constantly accused of left-wing bias, and I'll tell you why it's constantly accused of bias, because it is left-wing bias. Well, guess what? The new Director General, a guy called Matt Britton, a former director on the board of the Guardian newspaper, the left-wing lunatic Guardian newspaper, looks set to hire the former deputy editor of the Guardian, a guy called Ian Katz, as the new head of news. So we say, could you stop being so left-wing biased? And they look at us and say, you're just the people. You're just the people who watch the BBC. You will do what you're told, and we will continue to brainwash you with left-wing claptrap. Aren't you sick of all this? Aren't you sick of it? 0344 499 1000. And on a different note, at the end of the show, towards the end of the show, Kinsey Schofield, our great royal guru, will join me to discuss how Harry and Meghan really are now the pariahs who will never be allowed back into the royal fold. All that and so much more, so don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now, on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Monday afternoon together, and I'm really pleased to say that my first guest is my friend and former colleague. Well, she still is my colleague, but she's my former producer, the great Talk presenter Samara Gill. Hi, Samara.
Hi, Kev. Wow, you're fully back. My goodness, we missed you on the airwaves.
Well, I was watching all this from afar and, you know, Greek people saying to me, what's going on in your country? You know, there were Americans on this island and the rest, and they were echoing what J.D. Vance said. And by the way, I'm with J.D. Vance all the way. I don't really care that he conflated anti-white racism with our immigration problems, our migrant crisis. That was a bit off kilter. But in essence, J.D. Vance is exactly right. Henry Novak's death, the manner of his death, the way the police treated him is symptomatic of the decline of our civilization. And if we want to deny all of that, if we want to say, keep your nose out of British politics, then we are making a big mistake. J.D. Vance is an intelligent man making a very astute observation. Now, on this tack, Samara, this has just broken in the Telegraph in the last couple of hours. Police, since Henry Novak, since the death of Henry Novak, have been busy recruiting. They've got adverts out now for £75,000 a year diversity officers. When are they going to learn?
It's a great question. If this instance, if this horrendous thing whereby police showed up and an accusation of racism was treated more seriously than a murder, because that's what happened with Henry Novak, then if this doesn't tell them to stop hiring all these diversity officers, stop spending £5.2 million annually, that's what the Met Police have spent on recruitment to its Culture, Diversity and Inclusion unit. They have over 64 staff in that unit. If that doesn't tell them where they should be putting their resources and where they shouldn't, I don't know what to tell you, Kev. And you're right. On the weekend, I actually did an interview with a guy who was barred from the police. Right? I saw that. Luke Salmon. Yeah. Exactly. And the things he was telling me about the way that he was treated simply for asking a question. And this is someone who was, you know, he had a gleaning record in the police. He got barred for simply asking a question about Islam. And so that's where it's at. So I've got a lot of time for the police officers on the front lines who are actually usually pretty sensible, apart from some in this horrendous situation. But it is the pen pushers at the very top and those who are not on the front lines that are actually the ones legislating these people.
Yeah, a Met Police spokesman, as you say, they've spent £5 million on diversity. They're recruiting new diversity officers now while crime rates soar. Talk about getting your priorities wrong. A Met Police spokesman said, we police London without fear or favour. As I said, no, you don't. You're terrified of being accused of racism and you favour anyone that isn't white. That said, let me continue with the quote. We police London without fear or favour and continue to strive in serving all communities equally. What a load of crap. As society and politics become more polarised, it is vital policing remains impartial and all operational decisions are grounded in legal principles. The work of our Culture, Diversity and Inclusion Division continues to improve how we serve all communities in line with our new Met for London strategy. We don't want them to do this. We want them to catch the bad guys. This DEI obsession, this diversity obsession, isn't what the police should be about. And we saw with Henry Novak where it leads to. This is not about equality. They have replaced the racism that brought about the death of poor Stephen Lawrence back in the early 90s with the racism, the anti-white racism that brought about the death of Henry Novak in 2026. The pendulum has swung so far in the opposite direction that the police do not police this city or this country equally. It's obvious to every single one of us, and the police stare us in the eyes and they say that's not true. And Keir Starmer says there's no such thing as two-tier policing. The boss, the chief constable of Hampshire Police, said, I don't recognise that term. Well, sack that idiot and find a chief constable who does recognise that term. This is an outrage.
It's an absolute outrage, but this is sentiment that's echoed throughout all our institutions, Kev. I mean, when you look at, it's basically people wanting promotions and basically going up the corporate ladder, where it be policing, politics, or anything like that, where they are too scared to say what they really feel, put a stick in the sand, do some common sense and speak some common sense, but they won't do it because they want that promotion and they want to progress within their careers. And that's what time and time again police officers who have been disaffected have come out and said. And, you know, even when you look at the Sunday Times brilliant reporting that found that Hampshire Police tried to issue a statement during the Henry Nowak murder trial to counter what it called misinformation online. And they did this while the case, they wanted to do it while the case was still active, which any even first-year journalism student would tell you you should not be doing. Worse than that, the paper claimed that the force initially wanted to portray Henry as the aggressor in the statement, the murdered boy as the aggressor.
Repeating their crime, Samara, repeating their crime. That's what they did at the scene of that poor kid's death, and they wanted to double down on it in the trial because they knew what was coming. The police, time and time again, like they did in Southport, they say, oh, we're worried about disinformation, we're worried about misinformation. That's their word for the truth. They knew what was coming down the line, and they wanted to put out this statement in the middle of Vikram Digwa's trial, that Sikh killer, in order to ward that off. They're not that interested in principles, morality and decency. They're just worried about their image. This is it. This is ground zero for the police. If they don't learn from this, then there is going to be hell to pay. But clearly, today we learned they're busy hiring £75,000 a year diversity officers while crime soars, an indication that they show no signs whatsoever of learning their lesson.
It's utter madness, genuinely. I do not understand why this has been politicised, and the way that Keir Starmer keeps trolling this line of Henry Novak's family saying they didn't want you guys to talk about this, they didn't want you to do this. That's not true. I believe what I read from the statement is that the family just don't want any hatred directed towards the Sikh community, which I can completely agree with. I do not think that all Sikhs should be held to account just because of one extremely bad egg who used and abused his power with the Kirpan. But I do think that it doesn't mean that we can't have an open discussion about what happened. And we're hearing again from that Sunday Times report that, you know, the family had to step in and say that they weren't happy with the police making that statement. They wanted to change the wording. I mean, this is a family that was grieving from the murder of their son, and they're having to talk to the police about what their statement's going to look like and how they're portraying their son. It's quite frankly disgusting, Kev.
Yeah, all the police were in Hampshire Police, all they were interested in was their image, public relations, PR. Oh, don't say that about us. They knew what was coming down the track, and we haven't. If you're watching it, if you're the chief constable of Hampshire Police, we haven't finished with you yet. We really haven't. Trust me. Well, there's a few other things going on, so let's try and cover some of them. Interesting story about the General Secretary of the GMB union, a massive union chief, guy called Gary Smith, proving that on the left, there are sensible people as well. We need more people like Gary Smith. He has furiously laid into crazy Ed Miliband's net zero insanity, calling it economic madness. And he said, you know, the Labour government worries about reform. Well, Ed Miliband's nut zero policies are driving, he says, my members, in other words, members of the GMB, towards reform, because reform looked like a beacon of common sense. Ed Miliband, meanwhile, continues to spew out deranged lunacy.
Yeah, I think that when union bosses start sounding like Reform UK, you know something's gone very badly wrong, Kev. I mean, seriously, this is woeful. And when you saw all those kind of leaked messages from the Mandelson files last week that Labor had to release, you can see that people really, really have a lot of contempt, even within the Labor cabinet, for the own policies that they are pushing. I mean, this is something that is total economic madness. You've got Britain sitting on energy wealth while importing energy from abroad. I mean, to go fully into the North Sea, we're actually taking from our own basin and buying it off another country because we share that basin under the North Sea. That makes sense. So it is ludicrous. And you're right. Unfortunately, it's working people, and the union boss is right, working people are at the losing end of this. It's not the Islington dinner party sect. It's not people within the Labour cabinet. It's those who we used to have a very profitable industry that no longer exists anymore. And now everyone's on benefits, it seems. I mean, I know but it seems like people have had to go and do that because they actually don't have jobs in those sectors anymore.
Yeah, I mean, Gary Smith isn't the first union chief to have a go at Labour. Labour isn't even in sync with the trades unions, who, of course, pretty much fund the Labour Party. So there are big problems there. And I never thought I'd say this, but we look to the TUC for a breath of fresh air, for some common sense, and they are delivering it. Unlike Keir Starmer, unlike the deranged idiot Ed Miliband. A quick story also from the NHS. This is extraordinary. You know, Ed, old West Streeting, you know, people say, well, he quit because, you know, he's going to mount a leadership bid. He's going to take over from Keir Starmer and he's not happy with the direction of the government. I think he quit before people found out what an absolute mess he'd made of the NHS. Got Keir Starmer keeps saying, Labour are delivering. Waiting lists are down. Yeah, how about this one then? 16,000 patients died last year after long waits in A&E. 16,000. That's extraordinary. A real sign that the NHS isn't working, that the NHS is a dysfunctional, chaotic mess thanks to this government.
Exactly. I mean, for all the arguments about funding, structures, reforms, this is absolutely what failure looks like, unfortunately. The NHS has more money than it's ever had in the history of it existing, and still 16,000 patients died after waiting. I mean, many of us cannot forget.
In a year,
videos.
think of that. Isn't that, my maths are terrible, but that's like, I don't know, is that hundreds a day or something? It's ridiculous.
I mean, it's gotta be. It's gotta be. My maths is even worse if you wanna have that game. But I mean, the thing is, it doesn't have a money problem. You're right, Kev. It's got a massive delivery problem. And Wes thought that he was so great at this job. This was sort of the jewel in his crown of what he's been able to achieve as part of the Labour government. Well, clearly not. And it is disgraceful. You know, they should not die from waiting. And his whole thing was, oh, we've scrapped all the waiting lists. Well, we all know that was basically him taking a delete tab to what had actually been going on. I know that myself. I had someone ring me up about something that I'd inquired about 2 years ago just so they could take me off the waiting list. But I had to go to Australia to actually get the surgery done in the first place. So I'm just showing you how ridiculous the NHS is in that example. But I think we do really need to think about an overhaul of the system from the top to bottom, bring the matrons back, you know, make sure that they're actually counting, because they used to do the accounting. They used to actually do the books for everyone and make sure that everyone was completely within turn when it came to the funding for their specific...
Well, they were the backbone of the health service, but not anymore. And but I just want that figure for the audience to sink in. 16,000 people died in the NHS last year after long waits in A&E. 16,000.
And that's what we know of. Who knows how big that number actually is?
Yeah, and this pathetic Prime Minister of ours is bleating away about this is one of my triumphs. Yeah, well, if that's one of your triumphs, I'd hate to see one of your disasters, Keir. Funny enough, I do see your disasters about every 10 minutes. Samara, great to hook up with you again. Good to have you on the show. Thank you so much. Samara Gill there, Talk's excellent presenter and roving reporter. I think she's going to be on Breakfast tomorrow. I should have asked her this, but I actually know this, though. That guy, Luke Salmon, that she's interviewed about how he got kicked out of the police force for asking innocent questions about Islamists, Gaza and anti-Semitism, tackling anti-Semitism. She's interviewed him, a brilliant interview, I gather, and I believe that's going to be on Breakfast tomorrow. We might play a bit of it on Drive later in the day as well, so look out for Samara tomorrow. We're going to go to a break now, and when we come back, we're going to discuss what I think is the central problem of the police, and that is that the great and the good, the watchdogs, the barristers who look who independently scrutinise our police forces, they believe that the fight against racism has not gone far enough, despite Henry Novak. Extraordinary. 0344 499 1000. Stay tuned.
We are going to remove all forms of DEI from policing. We will also, and we're the only, look, the Labour Party have not committed to this, the Tory Party have not committed to this. Reform are also taking the view that we would immediately ensure that nobody gets to carry deadly weapons on our streets unless you're law enforcement. So I don't care what religion you are. I don't care how ceremonial, in quotes, your dagger is.
So you would
not get to carry. There will be no religious exemption.
Okay. So you would stop the Kirpan being carried.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's talk about the problem of police and their obsession with diversity, their obsession with fighting racism, and their denial that anti-white racism looks like it's their real problem. Let's talk to the Reform UK Police and Crime Commissioner for Leicester, Rupert Matthews. Hello, Rupert.
Hiya, you all right?
I'm good. Thanks for joining us. A lovely position you seem to be in. You've got better weather than us, that's for damn sure.
Yeah, well, I've taken a couple of days off work. I'm down in Dorset visiting friends at the minute.
Dorset? Blimey, it's a lot better than here, I'll tell you, in London. Now, this is what I wanted to talk to you about, because I think this is at the centre of the problem with our police. There's a thing called the Independent Scrutiny and Oversight Board, and this is backed by police chiefs, and it is there to specifically look at how the police are bringing into action or into effect their plan of action on inclusion and race. Now, the chair of the Independent Scrutiny and Oversight Board is a barrister, a woman of colour, not that that is necessarily relevant, a barrister called Ambimbola Johnson. She says that the problem with the police, this is in the slipstream, in the wake of the tragedy of Henry Novak. We all know about what happened there. She says that the problem with the police is that the fight against racism hasn't gone far enough. I would suggest, Rupert, that while we all applaud fighting racism, the police have become so obsessed with it in the wake of Stephen Lawrence back in 1993 that the pendulum has swung way too far, and the fight against racism has become the police force's entire obsession to the detriment of decency, equality, treating white people the same as black. That is the problem, not that the fight against racism hasn't gone far enough, but the fight against racism has gone way too far.
OK, so this is all part of the Police Race Action Plan, which started about 3 or 4 years ago now. And you're absolutely right, this is not anything to do with how the police interact with people from different ethnicities. So in the city of Leicester, for instance, we've got a big Muslim population, we've got a big Hindu population. This race action plan, which Ms Johnson is in charge of, it's got absolutely nothing to do with teaching the police, well, you know, how do you behave when you walk into a mosque or to a Hindu temple so that you don't cause offence? None of that. This is all about activism, political activism, to try and steer the police into taking an anti-white view. And they've been quite open about this. They don't want equality. They're not looking for understanding. They want equity of outcome, irrespective of what the person has actually done. And so you get into the ridiculous position where if you've been, let's say, arresting more people of Chinese heritage than you have of, I don't know, Hindu background, then under this scheme, you've got to let the next one go. You mustn't treat them so severely. You mustn't charge them because they're after equity of outcome. And that is absolutely wrong. The police must treat everybody equally. They must be completely neutral to colour, to race, to class, to background. And yet this plan that's come out of the National Police Chiefs Council, who, in my opinion, should absolutely hang their heads in shame over this, is purposefully saying the police should not treat people equally. They want to see equity of outcome along ethnic lines, and that is going to end up with some people being treated more harshly than others. That's wrong.
Let me ask you this. This is what I think all this diversity and race training, you know, we've heard about officers, young officers down in Hampshire, complaining that they're being brainwashed, you know, they're being told what to think. All of this obsession with diversity, the Met Police has spent £5 million on it. We're learning today that police forces across the country now, after Henry Novak, are advertising for £75,000 a year diversity officers. I think that the best thing to do, Rupert, would be to just cancel all of this training, all of this diversity claptrap, and just tell police officers, operate with common decency, with courtesy and decency, and be blind to the colour of people's skin and their religions and their culture, but just be polite and decent. Isn't it as simple as that?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously I can't speak for Hampshire. I've got no first-hand knowledge of that police force. In our area in Leicestershire, we do provide some basic training on how you should behave if you come across a Hindu priest, how you should behave if you walk into a mosque, because you don't want to give offence unnecessarily. But when it comes down to actual police work, you're absolutely right. We've got to be completely colourblind. We've got to treat everybody equally. But sadly, that's not what the High Command of the police want to do. That's not what the High Command of the police want. And so you have this real division of opinion between the National Police Chiefs Council and the College of Policing on the one hand, and frontline police who just want to get on with doing the job on the other. And that is where the problem has arisen. Ms Johnson was appointed, I think, 3 years ago now. Some of us at the time warned, if you put an activist in charge of this, you're just going to end up getting into trouble, and that is exactly what has happened.
Yes, indeed. Now, let me ask you this as well, Rupert. This is what I think is infuriating people across the country, millions of people, is, you know, you see it, I see it, millions of people see it. We do have two-tier policing. They do approach people of colour in a different way to the way they approach white people. There's no doubt about that. And yet, they stare us in the face, Keir Starmer, police chiefs, and they tell us two-tier policing doesn't exist. The Chief Constable of Hampshire, where poor Henry died, as a result, I would suggest, of anti-white racism, a guy called Alexis Boone said, I don't recognise the term two-tier policing. I don't recognise it. Well, I say sack Alexis Boone and find someone who does. Two-tier Keir does the same. He stares us in the face and says to millions of people, we can feel two-tier policing. We know it's happening. Two-tier Keir stares us in the face and says, you're wrong. Pretending that this profound problem does not exist is not good enough. And it is a recipe for disaster. People are getting more and more furious. Your thoughts about the way the establishment refuses to tackle two-tier policing by pretending it doesn't exist, because it does exist, doesn't it?
Well, that is, of course, what they are going to say, because they don't want to look into this. It's a problem. It's a whole can of worms they don't want to look at. We've got the Police Race Action Plan, which is absolutely under the magnifying glass at the moment, and quite right. But across the public sector as a whole, and the police are part of this, you do have this culture of EDI, equality, diversity, inclusion. The police force I look after has recently started trying to change that from being equality to being equity, which again is shifting it from treating people equally to trying to get equal outcomes, which is a whole nother kettle of fish. It is a problem right across the public sector. It is part of an embedded culture, and people know that if they don't pay lip service to it, if they don't go along with it, they're not going to get promoted, they're not going to get anywhere in their career. And so it is an absolutely stifling blanket sitting over what's going on. So yes, the Police Race Action Plan is a particular problem within policing. But the whole issue of aggressive activist equality, diversity and inclusion is a problem right across the public sector, and the police are no different.
Rupert, it's good to have you on the show. Thank you very much. And I'm so jealous of where you are and the weather. I mean, you should see London at the moment. So have a lovely time and come on the show again soon. Good to talk to you. Thank you very much. Rupert Matthews there, Reform UK's Police and Crime Commissioner for Leicester, talking a lot of sense, I would suggest. Why won't they listen to us? Why won't Keir Starmer listen to us? Why won't the likes of Alexis Boone, the police chief of Hampshire, listen to us? You know, if millions, you know, two-tier policing does exist, but even if it didn't, if millions of people believe it existed, isn't it incumbent upon the Prime Minister and police chiefs to at least tackle that problem? The fact that it does exist, we know it exists, and they stare us in the face and say, you plebs are wrong, it's just outrageous. 03444 99 1000. Next up, we're going to talk to Rafe Heidel-Manku about this, and we're going to talk about banknotes as well, so stick around.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's go over to my next guest because we'll talk about a little bit about the police, and we'll get his reaction to this because I'm keen to get that. And then after the next break, we're going to talk about Churchill being replaced by bumblebees on our banknotes because I say that does not denote a serious nation. And also, it proves that we are, or the powers that be, the Bank of England, the left-leaning establishment, are somehow ashamed of our glorious history. We'll talk about that in a minute, but first let's introduce historian and former board member of the International Churchill Society, Rafe Heidelmann-Koo. Hi, Rafe.
Hi, Kevin. Great to be with you.
Good to have you on the show. Well, can I get your thoughts first? I've been away for a week, as you know, so I've been watching this growing scandal about Henry Novak and anti-white racism in the police from afar. And I think that the most galling aspect of it is that we can all feel it. The people of this country can feel two-tier policing. We know about it. We saw it with the death of Henry Novak, where all a guy had to say was, I've been called nasty racial names. Never mind the white guy who's dying on the ground. Let's arrest him and believe the person of colour. We all know it's going on. But Keir Starmer, police chiefs, stare us in the face, say, no, you're wrong. There's no such thing as two-tier policing. Two-tier Keir says two-tier policing doesn't exist. Alexis Boone, the police chief of Hampshire, where Henry's tragedy unfolded, says, I don't recognise that term. We're being gaslit. We can feel two-tier policing palpably, and yet the establishment, the authorities, stare us little serfs in the face and say, you're wrong. It's outrageous.
Outrageous is exactly the term, and nothing actually reveals more clearly the disconnect between our elites, I don't want to call them elites, but those who are in positions of power through all our institutions, and the great British public, than the tragedy of Henry Novak. We can all quite clearly see two-tier policing in action. We now live in a state, in a country where if you see two people in a fight, you know that the police are going to assume that the white person is the culprit in some capacity. That's the way we're going. Anti-white racism and anti-Jewish racism are the only two forms of racism that seem to be tolerated in this country. And of course, you can't expect any of the official spokesmen from the police to come out and say anything else other than that two-tier policing doesn't exist. Because what I've seen and what's enraged me over the last few days is everyone that the BBC has wheeled out, the senior police force figures, these are all careerists, grifters, who have been milking the DEI system for all it's worth for the last few years. So the people that are the spokesmen for the police and all these issues, people like, I will say people like Neil Basu and others, you know, they've built a career on the back of DEI policies. And so, of course, they're going to deny that there's two-tier policing. And they've been coming up with terrible justifications for saying why it's necessary to treat different ethnicities different to white people, saying, oh, well, you know, stop and search. More black people are stopped and searched than white people. Well, I'm afraid to say more black people are involved in stabbings and crimes like that. So, no one is actually looking into the fact that we are still being lied to. We are still being gaslit by people, even after this tragedy has shaken Britain to its core. And you have to wonder, at what point are the British people going to say, enough is enough? We won't be lied to any longer. And the sheer audacity of people like David Lammy to try to say that there's a difference between George Floyd and Henry Novak is utterly disgraceful. I think he should resign for somehow trying to say that George Floyd's death was somehow more significant and was worthy of taking the knee, whereas he wouldn't take the knee to Henry Novak. There is a difference between Henry Novak and George Floyd. Henry Novak wasn't a criminal. Henry Novak wasn't a drug addict who put a gun to a pregnant woman's stomach, and yet people like Lammy were happy to take the knee for him and to politicize the death of George Floyd, whereas they're now saying you cannot politicize the death of Henry Novak. It stinks.
Yeah, and it's so painfully poignant that George Floyd's last words were, "I can't breathe." Guess what Henry Novak's last words were? "I can't breathe." And yet, we all have to go prostate one knee to take the knee, and policies were changed in this country. Policing policies were changed in this country because of George Floyd. American policing doesn't bear any comparison to policing in this country, and yet everything changed because of George Floyd. Nothing, it seems, is going to change because of Henry Novak, and it damn well should. Let me move on to your comfort zone history, Rafe. Now, this is the story of a veteran police officer, a guy called Paul Birch, gave an interview to one of the Sunday papers yesterday. He was a veteran of 24 years distinguished service. He was a counter-terrorism expert. He was forced, along with colleagues, to attend the Met Police's mandatory leadership course on anti-racism. During this course, he said that they were all bored stiff while they were listening to all this claptrap. There was a moment when he realised, I'm going to have to leave the police force, because they're sitting there, these experienced coppers, being lectured to by some sort of left-wing activist. And they were told, well, you know, this is how terrible this country is, because, of course, there was slavery, and yet, after the war, the Windrush immigrants, you know, the Caribbeans who arrived on Windrush after the war to help Britain because we needed workers, they were told, the coppers, they were told that these black Caribbean immigrants were rounded up forcefully and forced onto Windrush and sailed over here against their will. Paul Birch pointed out that this wasn't true and was shouted down. He said that was the moment that I knew I had to leave the police force. In other words, our police officers are being brainwashed by lies.
It's absolute indoctrination, yeah, and it is pure propaganda and lies. I mean, you know, for heaven's sake, as far as I know, actually, there was a lot of reluctance to allow the Windrush to actually dock in this country, actually, and there was certainly no question that anybody was forced onto a boat to come over here. They came here to seek a better life. Look, none of this is a surprise to us. This has been going on for years. The tide must surely be turning on all of this, because everyone can see the emperor has no clothes. The best way to increase racism in this country is to send people on these anti-racist courses. You know, we had got to a wonderful point in this country where we were becoming a colorblind country. You know, remember the 1980s and 90s, you had people, you know, athletes like Linford Christie or Daley Thompson or Tessa Sanderson. No one really thought of them as being anything other than British. Today, we are all now forced to automatically see everyone for their skin color. That's how the conditioning of the left has infiltrated all of our lives. We all see race now in a way we didn't see it 20 or 30 years ago. That is so damaging for a society. We need to have one cohesive identity that brings us all together, and yet we've never been more fragmented. And to have all of these diversity courses now, I think in Hampshire Police, I think they're advertising for a £75,000 diversity officer. Saying that it's essential. What is it essential for? It's not essential for stopping stabbings, clearly, is it? It's not essential for actually doing a proper job and investigating something. Why is it essential? This is so destructive, and we need to essentially get a government in. You know, Reform says it wants to do away with all these DI hires, and the people that are teaching this stuff are pig ignorant as well, because they're coming out with the sort of propaganda that you're talking about.
Lies, yeah, absolute lies. Unbelievable. Listen, Rafe, we're going to go to break now, and we'll talk about Winston Churchill and our banknotes when we come back. Stay where you are.
we are going to remove all forms of DEI from policing. We will also, and we're the only, look, the Labour Party have not committed to this, the Tory Party have not committed to this. Reform are also taking the view that we would immediately ensure that nobody gets to carry deadly weapons on our streets unless you're law enforcement. So I don't care what religion you are. I don't care how ceremonial, in quotes, your dagger is.
So you would stop
there will be no religious exemption.
Okay. So you would stop the caravan being carried.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with historian, former board member of the International Churchill Society, Rafe Heidel-Mankoo. Well, overarchingly, Rafe, let me ask you what you think of the Bank of England's decision to replace Winston Churchill, arguably our greatest ever Prime Minister, with bumblebees on our banknotes.
Well, look, the first thing to say here is every time I talk about this, some moronic numpties like to point out to me on social media and say, oh, well, the banknotes change every few years, as if I've got no memory of what happened 10, 15 years ago. The difference now is that for the first time, all historical figures are going to go from our banknotes.
Yeah, Jane Austen is going as well, isn't she?
Yeah, we're going to get nature across all our banknotes. They're all going to go. This is a war on our history. So yes, Churchill would eventually have to go in the normal cycle of things to be replaced by another person, perhaps Lord Nelson. But what we're seeing now is a war on our history, and it's been a deliberate stitch-up by the Bank of England. We have to be clear about what happened here, because the Telegraph had a Freedom of Information request, and they revealed that the Bank of England deceived us by they told us that there was a big public vote of tens of thousands of people who took part in a public vote. Turns out the decision actually relied on a focus group of 119 people. So they have changed the currency of the country based on the findings of a group of 119 people in a focus group, which they say preferred nature over historical figures. But what they've also been deceitful about and devious about is that they've lied about this public vote. The public vote was skewed to favour a nature outcome. They should have basically said, do you want nature or do you want history? What they actually said in this vote was, do you want nature or do you want historical figures? Do you want historical events? Do you want architecture? Only by dividing history into three categories could nature have a chance of winning. And they knew that. Whereas, of course, most banknotes include a historical figure and historical architecture, like Churchill and Parliament on the £5 note, or Wellington and the Battle of Waterloo for a historical event like the previous £5 note. So this was a clear effort to stitch up and get rid of our past and our history because they're embarrassed and ashamed of our past, and they don't want to cause offence to ethnic minorities and others who might not like to see a stale, male and pale person on their banknotes. This is deeply insidious, and it's part of this wider war on our history. And for anybody who lived behind the Iron Curtain, this is all eerily familiar. The renaming of streets, the pulling down of statues, the denigrating of your heroes, the changing of banknotes. This is the way you demoralize a society. You disconnect them from their past. You tell them that their past is bad, and then you create the new myths. And that's what we're seeing, this attempt to create a new Britain from a year zero, saying that diversity built Britain, ethnic minorities have always been there. We're seeing an attempt to rewrite and erase our history, and the Bank of England is now clearly just as captured by woke progressive ideology as every other institution. And you know that because the chief cashier of the Bank of England said that this change to nature was long overdue. And if you go to the Bank of England Museum, which I have done, they have a permanent exhibition on slavery as well, which I think tells you all you need to know.
The Bank of England does it? Listen, this is where I thought about this. So I've just been on a Greek island. I had to fly into Corfu. You know, And as you know, Rafe, I'm a man of infinite ignorance. So I flew British Airways there, and, you know, they sort of emailed me my boarding pass. And I said to my wife, I thought we were going to Corfu. She said, well, we are. Anyway, it said Kerkira. We're going to Kerkira. That's the Greek word for Corfu. And I thought, British Airways, why don't they use the British word for Corfu? And I think this cultural subjugation, this kind of default setting where we automatically assume that our culture is inferior to foreign cultures, to other cultures. I think it dates back from when we were first told, you can't call it Peking anymore, it's Beijing. Oh, you said Kiev, you have to say Kyiv. You know, when they started telling us that you can't use the English or the British words for foreign cities, was when I think this descent into our increasing national inferiority complex began.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And of course, there's no rhyme or reason behind it all. We're told we have to say Turkey for Turkey, but we don't say Polska for Poland. We don't say Deutschland for Germany. There's no rhyme or reason behind any of this. And it does come back down to this cultural nihilism we have here. It began also with cultural relativism, this idea that all cultures are the same and they're equal. I'm sorry, no. European culture is superior to other cultures, I would say, in many ways. And British culture and Anglo has created the modern world. We should be celebrating the fact that it was Britain that made the world around us more than any other country. No two countries have had a greater impact on the globe than Britain and the landmass that we today call Italy. And unfortunately, rather than celebrating that, we are celebrating every other culture. It's not just Britain, of course. The Prime Minister of Sweden about 10 years ago said that there's no such thing as Swedish culture. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine actually saying something like that? Such a great country, great composers, great military history, cuisine you can be a bit more questionable about. Yeah. But the point is, somehow, if you're coming from Africa or a tribal country, you have culture because you have some different sort of music, completely disconnecting, of course, or dismissing our great history of literature, of art, of sculpture, of architecture, of philosophy, everything that we've created here. Somehow we are the Philistines, and it's other cultures that often didn't produce anything quite close to that we now have to elevate and revere. We have sacralized minorities in this country, and that's why you get things like Henry Novak, and that's why, of course, you get nonsense like you get on your boarding passes.
Yeah, why is it? You know, this. Oh no, you must Mumbai, not Bombay. Kyiv, not Kiev. You know, Kerkira, not Corfu. Why is it selective? I mean, we still call it Moscow, where it should be Moskva, of course. We don't call Paris Paris, do we? So what is going on with this nonsense? I think, Rafe, we should all fight back and start calling it Bombay again.
Yes, well, I still say Kenya, which always gets everybody riled up when I say that. I say Bombay. I say Calcutta. I don't go in for any of this thing. I was planning on going to Constantinople for my birthday, actually, this year, otherwise known as Istanbul. Yeah. On that one, I'm a bit too reactionary for some, I suspect. But yes, I just remember Churchill once famously said, you may go from Paris to Marseille to Lyon. I go to Paris to Marseilles and to Lions.
It's extraordinary, though, isn't it? I mean, what is it, essentially, that makes our, if you like, our ruling elite, as you alluded to earlier, I use the word elite loosely. What is it that makes them so inherently ashamed of our glorious history and our national culture?
Well, there's a long strain of this in the left, and unfortunately the progressive left now dominate all of our institutions. I've said so many times that Britain is a post-revolutionary society. It's been a quiet, silent revolution, but people of this ilk now dominate and run all of our institutions, and they are ashamed of this country. As George Orwell said, an English intellectual would be more ashamed to be caught standing up for God Save the King than to be found stealing from a church poor box. and you do see this element. It's things like Emily Thornberry and Lady Nugent sneering at the England flags and in a working class council estate and so forth. And I think there's something masochistic here as well. It's almost as if they want to invite people into this country to do us harm, because of they feel that they have to expunge the stain of empire and slavery. And so we deserve this now. We have to invite all of these people in, whatever ills they may bring into this country. You know, Peter Hitchens, when he was a far-left Trotskyite, said we wanted mass immigration not because we loved immigrants, but because we hated Britain.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of that in here.
Yeah, it was to dilute our culture. Blair, I think, had the same ideas, to dilute vile imperialist British culture. It's got to stop, Rafe. It's got to stop. But brilliant to have you on the show, as always. Thank you so much. Rafe Heidelman-Koo there, historian, former board member of the International Churchill Society. Let me know what you think about this. Should we, you know, let's reclaim Bombay, shall we, and Calcutta and Corfu, I now discover. Let me know what you think about all this, the banknotes. You know, why are we replacing Winston Churchill, our greatest ever leader who saved this nation in the Second World War, with bumblebees on our banknotes? Why? 03444 991,000. Let's take a quick call. Let's talk about the police with Peter in Dorset. Hello, Peter. What would you like to say?
Hello there. Good afternoon. The police have got a problem like everybody else has got a problem.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, Britain needs to stand strong. If we talk about the vast majority of people in this country, and it doesn't matter whether you're a Labour supporter, Conservative supporter, Reform supporter, we've got to the situation, there's a huge undercurrent going on here, and it was seen at Southampton the other night, and that is that people want Britain back. It's as simple as that. And it's all very well saying, well, there are people changing banknotes and people doing this and people doing that. That's because we have got a Fabian bunch who are trying to control us into a totalitarian state.
I agree.
And we need, people have got to talk to each other, keep strong, and then get this lot out in the most democratic fashion going. And your guest that you've just had on, talking about the days of Linford Christie and Daley Thompson and these athletes who we thought were British and are British.
Because they were. They are British,
and the best of British.
Yeah.
And the best of British.
Yes.
And all anybody thought of these. And we need to get back to the situation where it doesn't matter what colour you are, who you are British, and that's the end of it.
Absolutely, Peter. Well said, well said. Great call. Thank you very much. Call me again. Peter in Dorset there. Now, next up, we're going to talk to Graham Stewart, MP, Conservative MP for Beverley and Holderness. That's after the news. We'll cover all the big stories with Graham, so stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. For the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to spend it in the excellent company of the Conservative MP for Beverley and Holderness, Graham Stewart. And in a little while after that, we're going to talk a little bit about America, Israel and Iran. Donald Trump, a peace deal is very, very close, apparently. Just one thing standing in the way of this imminent peace deal, that is the fact that Israel and Iran are bombing the crap out of each other. So apart from that, it's very, very calm out there. So we'll talk about that in a little while. So I want to talk about J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance's intervention, if you like, in British politics. Him comparing or saying, I think accurately, that somehow the death of Henry Novak was symptomatic of a civilization in decline, as in ours, the British civilization. And also the BBC, again, impervious apparently to our fears and complaints that it is left-wing bias, is going to apparently hire, or is tipped to hire, as its new head of news, the former deputy editor of The Guardian, a guy called Ian Katz, who is known as, quotes, a right old lefty. Matt Britton, the new Director General, by the way, he's no slouch either. He's a former board director member of The Guardian newspaper. It's just unbelievable, isn't it? We don't want you to be left-wing. We want you to be impartial. Why don't you listen to us? Nobody listens to us. Anyway, let's... now, this is breaking news before we go over to Graham. You've probably read about David Sullivan, the porn baron who has owned West Ham United Football Club for the last 16 years, who dramatically resigned over the weekend, or with immediate effect, because he said he was about to be hit by allegations of abusing his power and preying on women. This is what's happening. Multiple women. This is apparently going to be on Panorama. This is an investigation by BBC Panorama and the Times newspaper. This spans decades. Multiple women have accused billionaire businessman and West Ham co-owner David Sullivan of abusing his power and preying on them for sex, in some cases when they were teenagers. The allegations from 7 women have been uncovered in a joint investigation by BBC Panorama and The Times, as I just said, and these allegations span decades. They started in the 1980s. They accused Sullivan of sexually exploitative and predatory behaviour, including pressurising the women for sex during business meetings where he offered to boost their careers if they slept with him or gave him oral sex. Sullivan, 77 years old, said he categorically denies the claims, which span the period when he made a fortune from pornography, newspapers and football. So that is breaking news. That's on Panorama tonight, a co-investigation with the Times newspaper, part of the same company as Talk. There you go. Maybe we'll come back to that later in the show. But first off, let's go over to our guest, Graham Stewart, MP, Tory MP for Beverley and Holderness. Welcome, Graham.
Hi, Kevin.
I've been away for a week on vacation. I come back and I've been following, obviously the tragedy of Henry Novak and the allegations of two-tier policing. And I think that people all over the country palpably can feel two-tier policing. We know it is a thing. And the worst thing about this scandal is that Keir Starmer, two-tier Keir, and all of the police chiefs stare us in the face, you know, the little serfs, the millions of people who make up this country, and they say, no, you're wrong, there's no such thing as two-tier policing. That's not good enough, is it? Even if, Graham, two-tier policing didn't exist and millions of people feared that it did, it's incumbent upon the Prime Minister and police forces to tackle it, not to just pretend it's not happening. This is not good enough. This is a recipe for some kind of incendiary disaster. They've got to confront this, don't you agree?
I do agree. And you've got to make sure that you treat people the same, with equal levels of fairness. But Kevin, I'll be controversial for a moment in terms of your direction of travel. I remember I was at university in the 1980s, and I remember stopping and talking to a couple of policemen one night and on their radio. And I couldn't believe the racist language they used at that time, and thought it was okay. It was going out on the radio, on the police official radio, to the people at control, etc. And clearly that was thought to be acceptable. So there was a problem, and I guess what's now happened, in order to make sure that isn't the case, because that, you and I would both agree, should not be the case. We don't want racist language used by police officers talking about ethnic minorities.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely wrong. But we've now got to a point where they've kind of
overcompensated.
Put those historic wrongs right, have ended up claiming, pardon the parlance, but black is white. They've ended up saying that, this thing which says we should treat these people differently than these people on the basis of colour isn't discrimination. Well, of course it is. So they've gone too far. They need to face up to it. We need a system which has no tolerance for racism, but I think we need to make sure that we don't allow there to be an industry feeding on this, where they're all training police officers, training social workers, training teachers in a rather bizarre ideology, which your viewers and I, just view as wrong. We've got to work out how to get the balance right. We don't want to go back to the bad old days of racism among the cops and others. Neither do we want them going out having discrimination against white people, and because they've been trained, they must always believe one person over another. We need to be treated the same, then we need basic professionalism in place so that we look for the right outcomes and we trust individuals, and we don't train them to think that the opposite of what common sense tells them.
I mean, he's not called two-tier Keir for nothing, but don't you think the Prime Minister, and indeed police chiefs, owe the people of this country, the decent people of this country, the dignity of being taken seriously? We're not screaming banshees, and we're just saying, we saw what happened with Henry Novak. It's not the first time. We do now believe there's, if you like, there's an anti-white racism problem in the police. Take us seriously. Don't just stare us in the face and say, you're wrong, it doesn't exist.
Now, I'm torn. On the one hand, Kevin, yes, you're right, because we can find it in black and white. They've written it down. They say, we treat people the same. No. Here are the papers you're using for your training. Clearly, there is a problem, and you can see it down in black and white. So that needs to be fixed. On the other hand, Kevin, you and I need to be careful, being of the right, that we don't do the opposite of what went wrong with George Floyd, which was ghastly in America, but to suggest, therefore, that every policeman in America, let alone here, was racist and was killing people was wrong. And we need to make sure that we don't exaggerate it too much the other way either. So you then move on to the issue of, the riots in Southampton. I mean, people have a right to be angry about two-tier Keir and, fibbing about the reality of the training, etc. But they don't have the right to riot, do they?
No, they don't. But what I'm saying is I think that those riots and the increasing frustration around this nation, is a recipe for disaster, because the authorities won't take our fears seriously. They just turn round to us and say, shut up, you're wrong. That's why you're going to get riots.
I do think we need people to stand up. We need to make sure that the people who are on the boards who supervise this stuff, that we get the balance right. I think when you stuff it full of professional DEI people, that's what they do for a living, then they tend to over-egg it. They go out to their friends in, you can think of some of the Stonewall training that went on in terms of the LGBT stuff. You get these people in and they don't have common sense, and they're allowed to pursue an ideology until it's checked. So, but I hope and expect that it will be checked, but it does need people. It needs me as a member of parliament to stand up when required. It needs the people on the boards that supervise these organisations to stand up when they're required. And then, Kevin, we also need to make sure we don't exaggerate it, because in the age of social media, 24-hour media, where we've got film of almost everything, it's possible to take a tragic case like that of Mr. Novak and make us think that that happens all the time and everywhere. And I would like to think that it doesn't.
We'd all like to think that. I fear that it just does. But isn't it? Do you agree with the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp? And I agree with him. He essentially said all of this race training, all of this diversity in the police should be abandoned. And I agree with that. Now, what I do think, I mean, I think it's right that cops should be taught, you know, how to behave in a Hindu temple or a mosque, you know, respectfully and all that. Yeah. That is worth teaching coppers. But all this racism and diversity and equality training, Chris Philp said, should be abandoned, and I think it could be replaced by one diktat: common decency. Just treat people in a colourblind way with courtesy and human decency. Problem solved.
Well, I think you're right fundamentally, but as you said, Kevin, the truth is none of us know what we don't know, and if you've never been in a synagogue, you've never been in a mosque, you don't know how to behave, and therefore there is an element of, you know, taking people in a multicultural society and teaching them a little bit about, you know, what you can and can't do in certain circumstances in order not to cause offence. Because if you cause offence and you're a police officer, you lose the very people you're looking to give you the evidence and help you prosecute the criminal. So I think there's a balance. I think just saying that we have common sense diktat probably isn't going to do it.
No, but as I said, I agree with that, Graham. I do think it's well worth teaching, essential to teach coppers how to behave around different cultures.
Well, as usual, Kevin, I agree with you.
Yeah, but yeah, as I say, common decency and get rid of all this race training. Now, amazingly, you will be shocked to hear there are some other stories going on at the moment, and I wanted to get your take on this. I thought this was unbelievable. Last year, 16,000 NHS patients in England died after long waits in A&E. Now, Keir Starmer, our friend two-tier Keir, is very fond. It's his big clarion call at the moment. Look how much the waiting lists are coming down the NHS, as if he's actually solving the problem of the NHS. 16,000 patients died last year in England in NHS hospitals after long waits in A&E. That is an extraordinary statistic, isn't it?
Yeah, and of course behind the statistic are real people and real families dying in pain with a loss of dignity. I had one of my local constituents told me they had a relative who was still in a corridor in A&E 24 hours after they were admitted. 24 hours. They then said they were discharged on a Friday. They came home for just 5 minutes and then needed an ambulance to take them back in, and that took 3 hours. I mean, I'm doing a bit of a sort of survey at the moment out to my constituents asking about this because, as you say, Kevin, the government has said how waiting lists are coming down, and I think that's great. There's worrying signs that some of it's being triaged away. In other words, people are being removed from lists. We need to make sure that's not the case. Another resident said that their 90-year-old relative was told they had a new cancer, which needed urgent removal. And 8 weeks later, they still, and this is a 90-year-old, 8 weeks later, they still had no date. The cancer had doubled in size and it was causing extreme pain. One after another, I'm hearing about from my constituents the reality of NHS care. I don't want to make a political point on it. The challenges were there under the Conservatives, and one of the things I'd really love this government to succeed on would be to make the NHS better.
Yes, indeed. That, by the way, that's 300 deaths a week after long waits in NHS A&E departments. It's just extraordinary. So, you know, if I was two-tier Keir in his government, I wouldn't be crowing about what a fabulous job they're doing with the NHS. As you say, Ask the grieving relatives of those 16,000 people who died after long waits in A&E. They got a different story for you. What did you make?
Sorry, just on that, Kevin, just say, I mean, we need the resources going in, and that's where, long term, if you want a healthy NHS, do you know what you most need? You need a strong economy. You need young people getting into jobs, not on the unemployment roster. You need fewer people claiming benefits and more people doing longer hours. Then we generate the tax revenue. First off, get the economy right, and then you can sustain the spending in an ageing population on the NHS and deliver high quality service. So what we've got at the moment is they've hurled money at it, which it turns out they're borrowing. You worry about
$3 trillion a year. $3 trillion a year they're borrowing.
Yeah, and then the economy itself is being undermined. You've got to get the economy right if you want to sustain the NHS in the long term. And that's what I think Kemi Badenoch's getting right in her analysis.
Yes, getting the economy right, though, I will remind you that the Chancellor of the Exchequer is Rachel Reeves. So getting the economy right, good luck with that. What did you make, Graham, of the union chief? He's not the first trade union chief to slam crazy Ed Miliband's nut zero lunacy. But this is Gary Smith, the boss of the very significant GMB. He's the General Secretary there. He says that Miliband's net zero zealotry, his lunacy, is A, economic madness, and B, driving his members towards Reform UK. Gary Smith, I think, proving that I'm sure that you or I wouldn't sort of have the same political worldview as Gary, but he's proving that, you know, people on the left, there are sensible people on the left, like Gary, and he, like the rest of us, is shocked and astonished by this crazed zealotry of this man, Ed Miliband.
Well, you're right, Kevin. It's 1,000 people, 1,000 families a month are losing well-paid, long-standing jobs in oil and gas in the North Sea. 1,000. Those are Gary Smith's members. And when he speaks to them, they say to him, which is why he said that it's economic madness, they're going, well, OK, I'm being fired by Harbour Energy, BP, Ithaca, all the companies who are all, you know, just reducing what they're doing because there's no new licenses, there's no future for the business in the UK. 1,000 a month losing their jobs. And they're going, but we're not using a single drop less oil or gas as a result. All we're doing is importing even more of it from abroad. And so I could just imagine Gary has no choice, as you say. I mean, he's listening to his members going, I'm about to lose my job, not because what I'm producing isn't needed anymore, but because of this maniac who says, no, we're not going to produce it here. And then from exactly the same basin, Kevin, I mean, it literally in the North Sea, same place, there's a pipe coming in from Norway. They're drilling it out. And then it ships, it comes up into Norway. If you follow it, it's quite interesting. So it goes all the way back to Norway, and then it joins the Langeled pipeline, the world's longest gas pipeline, and it comes right across the North Sea from Norway. It lands in my constituency, and we pay billions and billions of pounds so Norway can build its wealth fund even bigger. It's the biggest wealth fund in the world, by the way, bigger than the Saudi Arabians. Employ loads of Norwegians producing it and all the companies that support that. And the bloke who's a member of GMB says to Gary, I don't get it. Can you explain it to me? And Gary's going, no, I'm afraid I can't. It's mad, absolutely mad. And do you know what? And it's not so much the Norwegian ones, but other imports that we get comes in from Qatar, comes in from America. They have to do all this processing before sticking it in a tanker, shipping it across the world. So it has 4 times the emissions, Kevin, unbelievably, of stuff produced here. So even if you only cared about net zero, it's mad. So it's mad from every single angle you look at it. And Labour MPs are still standing up, parroting Ed Miliband's lunacy, saying this is true. Fortunately, Gary Smith has had the common sense to come out and call it for what it is, completely crazy.
It really, really is. Graham, great to have you on the show, as always. Thank you so much for your time. That was Graham Stewart, Tory MP. Now, next up, We're going to talk about America. We're going to talk about J.D. Vance, the Vice President, who is being accused by the usual suspects of an outrageous intervention in British politics because he says that the death of Henry Novak is symptomatic of a civilization in decline, as in British civilization. I think he's right. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. We also need to talk about what's going on with Iran and Israel because President Trump's much vaunted peace deal doesn't seem to be going that well because Iran and Israel are currently bombing the hell out of each other. We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
We are going to remove all forms of DEI from policing. We will also, and we're the only, look, the Labour Party have not committed to this, the Tory Party have not committed to this. Reform are also taking the view that we would immediately ensure that nobody gets to carry deadly weapons on our streets unless you're law enforcement. So I don't care what religion you are. I don't care how ceremonial, in quotes, your dagger is.
So you would
not get to carry. There will be no religious exemption.
Okay. So you would stop the Karapan being carried.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's talk about J.D. Vance. He's been accused by the usual suspects, that cretin Ed Davey leading the charge. I'll keep out of British politics, don't intervene. Obviously, David Lammy, big friend of J.D. Vance, telling him that his buddy was wrong when he said that the death of Henry Novak was symptomatic of a civilization in decline. I don't think that J.D. Vance was wrong, and I think he's got every right to say what he thinks about British culture. We have freedom of speech. Why can't J.D. Vance say what he thinks? So good for him. Well, let me introduce my next guest. He's a former US diplomat, foreign policy advisor for the Republican leadership in the US Senate, Jim Jetras. Jim, first of all, bear with me. We're going to have a quick look at David Lammy, our alleged Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary, speaking about his buddy, J.D. Vance, on the BBC yesterday.
I have spoken to J.D. Vance. I spoke to him yesterday and I told him he was wrong. This has got nothing to do with mass migration. One, let's be clear that obviously since the early 2000s and post-Brexit, migration has come down, but murder has come down too, actually, in our country. And two, the young man who perpetrated this crime was a Brit, born and raised in this country.
So what did you,
nothing to do with mass migration.
What did you say to him?
I told him he was wrong.
Well, Jim, you know, I think that the mass immigration element of what J.D. Vance said is, open to debate. It's a wider issue. I think I know where he was coming from. But I thought where he hit the nail right on the head was when he said that the death of this young man, Henry Novak, undoubtedly a victim of police anti-white racism was symptomatic of a decline of a civilization, as in the British civilization, I think he was quite right. And by the way, I think that American politicians, Americans like your good self, have every right to say what they think about this country, because we still vaguely, like your great country, have freedom of speech. Your thoughts?
Well, I think the key word there is vaguely, isn't it, Kevin? I mean, we don't have people being arrested here in the United States where we do have a First Amendment for something they posted on social media, which I understand is sometimes the case over there. I do think the two issues are related, mass migration and the fact that you have people here who don't abide by the norms of traditional British or English culture, behave accordingly, and then the police are biased in their favor against those of, let's say, indigenous British people. Whether we're talking about somebody who's got British citizenship because he was born in the United Kingdom, even though his parents came from somewhere else, that doesn't turn him into an Englishman. Doesn't mean that he has the same morals and values and identity as the people who built your country.
I think that's open to debate. I would say that Vikram Digwar, the killer, the Sikh killer, is British. I mean, he's very much steeped in his own culture, but also he's a Brit. But I do think that the police turning up and prioritising an accusation of racism against a person of colour over the fact that a white kid was dying from stab wounds on the pavement, handcuffing him and arresting him as he died, that is a sign of our declining civilization. J.D. Vance is quite right about this. And can we talk for a second, Jim, about this idea, oh, you can't intervene in British politics? You know, I seem to remember that at the last election, the last American election, the Labour Party, which was to go on to become our government, sent 100 volunteers to your great country to campaign for Kamala Harris. So clearly, there are times when we in this country feel the right to intervene in your politics. So why can't J.D. Vance say what he thinks, or for that matter, Donald Trump, or for that matter, you or any other American?
No, I agree with that entirely, of course, and here I am doing it, right? Look, obviously there should be state-to-state norms of what kind of political activities you allow. They should be quite minimal in interfering in other countries' political affairs. However, simply expressing an opinion, it seems to me, doesn't rise to that level. I mean, if you want to set up an NGO and try to somehow skew the election in another country, I mean, that's a form of aggression, really. But if you just say, hey, here's my opinion, take it or leave it, I don't see how that crosses a line.
Absolutely not. He's a bright guy as well, isn't he, J.D. Vance? Clever man.
Yeah, it seems to be so. By the way, I understand this Sikh gentleman is able to carry a weapon, which is very unusual in Britain because of his cultural background. I mean, why aren't native Britons, indigenous Britons, allowed to carry broadswords and battle axes as part of their cultural background? I mean, it's only fair, isn't it?
Yes, it is only fair. This guy, Vikram Digwar, brings shame upon our Sikh community here. They're well known to cause no problem at all, so this is unusual. But to hell with Vikram Digwar, and to hell with his family, to hell with his mother, who took the weapon away and hid it. And then his grandmother said, well, she did only what any mother would do. What, break the law against common decency? I don't think any mother would do that. That said, can we move on, Jim? I need to talk to you about Iran and Israel and the much vaunted peace deal, which now seems to be a long, long way away, given that Israel and Iran are once again bombing the hell out of each other. Where are we with all of this, do you think?
I don't think we're much of anywhere. I think you're right. I mean, look, the Strait of Hormuz was open before this war started. Now the Iranians control it. I don't think Mr. Trump can do anything about that. He says he can tell Prime Minister Netanyahu to cease and desist his attacks in Lebanon. Frankly, I don't think he has that authority. I think Netanyahu will pay lip service to that, but he'll do whatever he wants to do, and Mr. Trump can't do anything about it. I think he's got himself in a real pickle here, and he has no way of getting out of it.
I agree with you, and I do think Iran are now taunting the President of the United States of America. You know, they've issued a statement. Not only have we started to bomb Israel, we're going to bomb them for a week constantly. Obviously, Israel will retaliate. Meanwhile, Donald Trump keeps saying, oh, we're very, very close. We're very close. Well, I would say that now we are the opposite of very, very close. We're a long way away from any kind of peace deal.
Well, every time he says we're very close, I notice that the Brent crude price drops. So I think somebody is making some big money on these market manipulations here. I can't believe that the people in the markets are so foolish to think every time he says, "Oh, we're close to a deal," they must be actually close to the deal. But that's where we are. I think the other thing we need to keep in mind, Kevin, is there are credible reports now that the Iranians may actually now be close to a nuclear capability, because they've got to understand if this thing keeps escalating, the Israelis would be tempted to use nuclear weapons on Iran. And I think the Iranians are finally coming to the conclusion, well, I'd rather be North Korea than Libya. North Koreans get left alone, and they're going to be in a much stronger position if they do acquire a nuclear weapon. I think we're actually close to that. Another unintended consequence, I think, of this war.
Yeah, some Jewish friends of mine giving me a hard time the other day, saying, well, yeah, why are you supporting Iran and everything? Because my contention was this: I have no problem with America, Trump deciding it's time to teach Iran a lesson. It's time to bring them into line. I don't mind the idea of that. I think it's a very good idea. Where I have a problem is the outcome. It's not looking very good, is it?
No, it's not. And actually, Kevin, this is where I think some of the things intersect a bit with our previous discussion about this stabbing, is that this mentality that we don't have British interests or American interests at the forefront of our policy, that we have to think globally, invade the world, invite the world. We've got to get involved in everybody else's problems. Oh, and by the way, invite the entire rest of the world to come inside and live inside of our borders. I think it shows a mentality among a ruling class that really doesn't give a damn about their own people and what their interests are, but they have some kind of big global fixation that's very multicultural and has nothing to do with Britishness or Americanness.
As I say, I want to stress that I'm all for Trump's instincts, his feeling that something had to be done about Iran. But let's be frank, he's completely lost control of the situation, hasn't he?
Absolutely. I think he's just totally miscalculated. I mean, there are credible reports that the Israelis had been pressuring previous administrations to go in against Iran, and all of them looked down into the abyss and said, yeah, I don't think that's such a great idea. And that Mr. Trump was convinced that, hey, this is going to be a cakewalk. It was going to be like what happened with Venezuela, where we were able to wrap things up rather quickly and by subverting the government there. And, well, that's not going to happen in Iran. And I think he was sold a bill of goods, and now he can't get out of it.
Yeah, well, we'll watch that situation with interest. Jim, it's really good to have you on the show, as always. Thank you so much for your time. That's Jim Jetras, former US diplomat, foreign policy advisor for the Republican leadership in the US Senate. Now, he's like myself, he's a sort of Trump supporter. But we've got to be real about this. This is a disaster. This is a mess, isn't it? And, you know, Trump's saying, was it yesterday, a couple of days ago, oh, you know, I'm calling the shots here. I've told Netanyahu, you know, you can't bomb Hezbollah, you can't do that anymore. And so they go straight ahead and do it. You can't expect Israel, a sovereign state, to be attacked by Iran, to be attacked by Hezbollah and not respond, can you? Really? I don't know. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Next up, we're going to talk about the state broadcaster here, the British Broadcasting Corporation, the BBC, constantly charged with being left-wing biased, biased towards the left, extremely biased towards the left, anti-Israel, possibly anti-Semitic, so on and so forth. So they've got a vacancy for their head of news because Deborah Turness was involved in that outrageous panorama editing of Donald Trump's speech. Donald Trump suing the BBC for $10 billion for misrepresenting what he said on Capitol Hill back in 2020. So the head of news, Deborah Turness, had to quit along with the Director General, Tim Davie, And who's going to replace Deborah Turnus as head of news? Well, it looks as if it might be a guy called Ian Katz, former deputy editor of the left-wing Guardian newspaper. The Director-General, the new Director-General, Matt Britton, is a former board member, a director of the Guardian newspaper. So much for the BBC trying to sort out its left-wing bias. We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Well, here we are in Talk Towers, 17th floor, panoramic views of London. We're looking east to the Bermondsey area, just literally within a mile of here. There is a massive fire going on, huge black smoke billowing into the London sky. Don't know what it is, we'll try to find out, but just to let you know, there's a massive fire pretty near where we are in central London, in East London, Bermondsey. We'll try to find out what that is. In the meantime, well, I set this up before the break. The BBC, accused of left-wing bias, is sorting this out by apparently being set to appoint the former deputy editor of The Guardian, the left-wing Guardian, as its new head of news, Ian Katz. Let's talk to the campaign director at Defund the BBC, Rebecca Ryan. They just don't care what we think, do they? They just don't care. First of all, so we're all going, can you not be quite so biased towards the left? You're extremely left-wing biased. Can you stop doing this? Can you be impartial? Any chance? Could you maybe be impartial about the Middle East? Any chance? No way, no way. And now we learn that after Deborah Turnus left as head of news in disgrace in a way, because she oversaw that disaster on Panorama, besmirching the President of the United States, Donald Trump, who's now suing the state broadcaster for $10 billion. There's a vacancy, and guess who they're going to replace her with? At least the word is the former deputy editor of the left-wing Guardian newspaper. Who's going to appoint him? The new Director-General, Matt Britton, who's a former director of the Guardian newspaper. It's getting worse, Rebecca. What's going on?
Oh, it's such a cosy club, though, isn't it? It's so nice that they all sort of help each other and bring each other in, from one place, one, cosy club to another. And the thing is that the BBC is actually obliged by its charter to be representative and reflective of the whole of the UK. And instead, what we're seeing here is this, just playing to this narrow middle-class worldview. And that's not what the BBC should be about. This is an institution that's dominated by metropolitan professional class. And what does the BBC do to supposedly fix its problems? It just hires someone from exactly the same place, jumping from The Guardian to the BBC, from the BBC to the Guardian. It's just that it's indiscernible, the difference between the pair of them. And the thing is, when we look at the Guardian, the demographic, 86% of people who read the Guardian are ABC ones. That means sort of top professional, high academic type people, very middle class dinner party set. And this is the audience that these guys have been used to appealing to. And it's exactly this. The BBC just wants to carry on that message, that patronising message, whilst they're in charge there. And that's just not acceptable. It's against what their charter obliges them to do.
I mean, notwithstanding the fact that the new Director General, who took over from Tim Davie, and let's get this straight, Tim Davie resigned in disgrace, as did the former head of news, Deborah Turner. They both resigned in disgrace. Let's get that clear, because they oversaw the debacle of the Panorama misrepresentation of President Trump's speech back in 2020 on Capitol Hill, that making it look as if he called for insurrection against the American state, which he did nothing of the type. In fact, he called for the opposite, called for calm and peace. So they both resigned in disgrace. So Ian Katz, if he comes on in as the new head of news, will basically spit in the face of every single one of us who felt that the departure of the gruesome twosome, Davie and Turness was useless, by the way, utterly useless, that their departure would herald perhaps a new dawn at the BBC, that they would start to tackle this impartiality. You would have thought that, notwithstanding the fact he's a former board member at the Guardian newspaper, Matt Britton, the new Director General, might have realised that. But if he does give the gig to Left Wing, who's described, by the way, as, quotes, a right old lefty, Ian Katz, then clearly he doesn't care what we think either.
Absolutely not. That's the thing, is they're completely failing to grasp, what's going on in the country at the moment. Everyone else knows that there's sort of a mood in the country where people have had enough of this kind of wokeism being thrust down everybody's throats, and people are like, times are going to change. And the BBC clearly thought they could get away with editing Trump's speech because they thought, well, no one's going to complain because everyone hates Trump. That's their worldview, and they can't believe that anyone would speak out against it. And this is what we're going to see now, is if they bring in this guy Katz, who, as you say, is a right old lefty. We can all imagine what he's like, great fun at a dinner party. That it's just going to be more of the same. And how the BBC have failed to see that this really now, time is up for the BBC, that for it to carry on as it has been, and that they really need to wake up if they want to continue with the TV licence. We've already had, Farage and all those sort of types saying that they'll get rid of the TV licence, and so they have to take this opportunity to try and turn things around and stop with the groupthink. But unfortunately, if this appointment goes ahead, it looks very unlikely that they'll do that.
Indeed. Did you see this story about the BBC, that the commercial channels, ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5, are rather fed up because the BBC is spending billions of pounds buying in foreign programmes, mainly American programmes, of course. Again, that's taking licence fee payers' money and using it, I think, unfairly to defeat, if you like, the commercial sector. That shouldn't be what the BBC does with licence fee payer money. Spend it on foreign programmes, should it?
Well, absolutely, exactly. They're more interested in sort of perpetuating the licence fee than they are in actually delivering on their obligations. And so they just have to have these viewer numbers. And as far as they can see it, as long as they've got the viewer numbers and maintain the monopoly, then they can continue to try and justify the licence fee in Westminster. And it's just not correct to be doing that. All these other places like Netflix and Amazon and what have you, they will buy in other programs, and that's fine for them to do because they are commercial entities and people have freedom to choose whether to pay for those platforms or not. But we don't have that privilege with the BBC if we watch any live broadcast TV. And so we're forced to pay for these programs that we've probably seen on all the other platforms, and it's just an absolute waste of money.
Yeah, £87 million a year the BBC has been spending on foreign programmes, mainly American programmes, obviously, some Australian as well. over 10 years, so that amounts to nearly £1 billion. It's unfair competition, isn't it? Because they get £3.5 billion a year every year from the licence fee. To go off and just spend it on buy in foreign programmes, that's not what the licence fee is for, is it?
No, exactly. And that's what the licence fee is supposed to be for, is meant to be making programmes that, aren't commercially viable, that we wouldn't get in sort of commercial platforms or commercial channels, sort of more niche type programming that we wouldn't be able to get elsewhere. And therefore, it's going to be sort of supportive of British viewers who wouldn't necessarily get to see localised programmes anyway. I mean, there's a huge argument. One of the big arguments in Westminster for keeping the TV licence is that they want to see localised content. Well, you can't go around blowing licence fee payers' money on American and Australian programming then. You can't have it both ways.
It's an absolute disgrace. It really, really is. So, listen, thanks for coming on, Rebecca. We will watch this space to see if Ian Katz gets the gig. He's heavily tipped to get it. My guess is he's left-wing enough to qualify for the job. They'll never learn this lot, will they? It's not that they don't hear us. They don't hear the complaints. They just dismiss them as the howls of Neanderthal right-wingers, don't they?
Absolutely. They simply don't care. They just, like I say, with the Trump stuff, they just think they can get away with it and nobody of any worth will say anything about it. And that's the patronising view they have.
Yeah, their view on that the lawsuit from Donald Trump is, their defence is, how can you libel, how can you defame Donald Trump? He's the worst person who ever lived. Yeah, good defence. Good luck with that. You better get your chequebook ready, BBC, and put $10 billion in it. What a pile of idiots they are. Good to talk to you, Rebecca, as always. Fantastic stuff. Rebecca Ryan there, campaign director at Defund at the BBC. Mike Amstead is coming in next. He's head of content at The Sun newspaper, head of sport content. We'll talk about the big sports stories of the day. That next. Stay tuned.
We are going to remove all forms of DEI from policing. We will also, and we're the only, the Labour Party have not committed to this, the Tory Party have not committed to this. Reform are also taking the view that we would immediately ensure that nobody gets to carry deadly weapons on our streets unless you're law enforcement. So I don't care what religion you are. I don't care how ceremonial, in quotes, your dagger is.
So you would stop the
There will be no religious exemption.
Okay. So you would stop the caravan being carried.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Mike Amstead from The Sun is in the studio. We're going to talk about all the sport in just a moment, but first, a special announcement. talkSPORT have teamed up with Meantime to create a lager in time for the World Cup. It's called So Good Lager, which will be poured from all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. So whether you're watching the action this summer or settling in for an afternoon with your mates, make sure you check out talksport.com/so good to find your nearest pub. So good. 18 plus. Please drink responsibly. Well, yeah, so talkSPORT are making their own beer, the lager. Amazing, amazing for the World Cup. I think I'll have a few pints myself. About 10, I think. Mike Amstead is in the studio. Let's talk about the World Cup. Harry Kane and co enjoyed a round of golf with major winner Brooks Koepka. Did they beat him? He can be mercurial. He's good, but
I've been pretty confident. Although I think Harry Kane's quite useful with his clubs.
God, footballers
tend
to be really good.
I mean, they don't have much spare time, and they don't go out and have 10 pints of lager like you, Kev. So it's. So I think this shows you it's quite relaxed, the England camp at the moment. They're still over in Florida. Thomas Tuchel's letting them have a fair bit of free time. I think they're sort of, dining out with the wags in the evening who are already over there. He's encouraged the families to go out there, have holidays before, get used to the heat and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, so they had a round of golf, West Palm Beach. I imagine they're quite an exclusive club over there, I imagine. Yeah,
that would be. That would be
better golf.
It's a Donald Trump country.
Exactly, yeah. So, Kane, Jordan Pickford, John Stones, Elliot Anderson and Jason Steele all playing there. And Anderson's admitted he was blown away playing with Koepka. I mean, it's not every day you'll have a round of golf with a serial major winner.
Absolutely.
Hopefully it can inspire England to glory.
I know I'm late to this party. I'm late to this party. I haven't just got back from Greece, but I know it's only training, but shouldn't we have done better against New Zealand?
They're always funny, those warm-up games, aren't they? You sort of turn it... I mean, New Zealand lost 4-0 to Haiti a few days earlier, and Haiti, they're a minnows nation, aren't they?
So I get what you're saying.
But... So you're kind of thinking it should be a walking park, but they're sort of odd, aren't they? No one really wants to get injured. You're not going full pelt. It's hot. The pitch wasn't great. That sounds like I'm making excuses for England. Maybe I am. But I think it's a bit different from a Premier League game or a Carabao Cup game where you might go and hammer a team 5-6-0. Look, if we play Panama and we're struggling to 1-0 win, I think it's a different story.
And remind me again, when's our first game against who?
So we've got second warm-up game against Costa Rica Wednesday night, 9 o'clock UK time.
Yeah.
And then the first game of the World Cup for England is June the 17th against Croatia in Dallas.
That's right.
9 o'clock kick-off, again, UK time. So.
I'm just reading that Thomas Tuchel is saying that Luke Bellingham must fight for his place like everyone else.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it kind of goes with the narrative that Tuchel's had around him. I think, he's playing a delicate balance with Jude Bellingham, but I think he's making it clear, I'm the boss. You are one of my players. Admittedly, one of the best players, but I'm running this team, you're not. Yeah. I make decisions, you don't. So I think it's all part of that narrative. Is he very
dictatorial, Tuchel? He's the boss?
I think he makes it quite clear. Look, I think he lets players have the freedom, as we can see from this stuff like the round of golfs and the dinners with the wags and come over and enjoy your holiday and stuff like that.
Because he's big on team spirit,
Yeah, he's not that Fabio Capello, right, get in the camp and now it's just work, you're not having any fun. But I think when he needs to make it clear who's the boss, which he clearly is the boss, and he's been brought in for one reason, to win the World Cup, then he's going to make that. And whether that's to Jude Bellingham or, the third choice left-back, he's going to make that clear to them.
I should probably ask you this nearer the time, but what's your feeling about England? How far are we going to get?
Big question. Well, I think if it goes to plan, we play Mexico in Mexico City, and that'll be 100,000 Mexican fans going mad. Bit of altitude, potentially heat. It's hard to know. Later in the day, will it still be warm? But I think that would be the first big test. I think we should win the group fairly comfortably. Croatia aren't as strong as they used to be. Ghana, a couple of decent players like Semenyo plays for them. Should beat them. Panama, we should roll over. Then after that, it'd be interesting. So we should really beat Mexico on paper, but in their own backyard, 100,000 fans, who knows?
I've seen Mexico play. I saw when the World Cup was in LA. When was that? 94 or something?
94,
I saw Mexico play. I think it was against Romania. I mean, those Mexican fans, I mean,
yeah,
they're a player in themselves.
I saw Argentina versus Mexico and Qatar, and
crazy,
you wouldn't realise there was a match going on 3 hours before outside. You got in the stadium, and it's absolutely raucous. They're wild.
Exactly, it'd be interesting times. Right, Scotland are having a call-off row with Norway. Boss Steve Clarke slammed for pulling the plug on this friend.
This is a great little pre-World Cup row. So these two teams, Scotland and Norway, both at the World Cup, both over there in the US now, are supposed to have a sort of behind closed doors friendly. England have got one against a very amateur Miami team coming up. But these games are basically, look, we're not showing this on TV. This is a real warm-up exercise. But given they're both international teams taking it seriously, Scotland have pulled out at the last minute, citing worries over a few, quote, niggles. And Norway have just gone mad. They've accused Scotland of being unprofessional. You know, how can you do this? You brokered a gentleman's agreement. So it's quite good fun. Scotland found themselves at the centre of a row, and it's not even kicked off yet.
But Steve Clarke's a sort of walking controversy, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's always in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's kind of, this is one of these things. You can see where he's coming from. If he's worried about injuries, do I want to go in and have 6'5" Erling Haaland, you know, trample over one of my centre backs? But at the end of the day, you've got to go and have a match at some point, haven't you? So
yeah. Jose Mourinho, new Real Madrid boss, of course, is eyeing Chelsea's Enzo Fernandez.
Yes. So Jose, not officially appointed yet, but we know it's all pointing that way once his old mate Florentino Perez won the elections last night. And now I guess it's like, who are you going to spend a load of money on? Real Madrid need a bit of a rebuild, and Jose fancies Enzo Fernandez, so player that Chelsea once spent best part of 100 million on. And Real Madrid probably about to spend even more. And Enzo's made it quite clear he wants to get out of there. Chelsea aren't even in Europe next season, so...
Mourinho's, once he gets in situ, he'll start trying to buy Chelsea players, Spurs players, Man United players, get his own back.
This is going to be... the next 6 months of Jose Mourinho at Real Madrid are going to be incredible fun. Like, all the players you're going to buy, who's he going to get rid of, how's he going to treat Jude Bellingham, and how's Jude Bellingham going to react to it, how's he going to treat Trent Alexander-Arnold, and how is he going to react to it? And then you've got everything else happens after that.
He's still a great story in Mourinho.
Absolutely.
Well, West Ham fan Mike Amstead, what's your take on David Sullivan, resigning? We just found out this is an investigation by Panorama, the BBC, and the Times newspaper here in this building. We now know these are allegations from 7 women dating back to the 1980s. He basically... told girls that, because he was a porn baron, he'll give them, it'll be good for their careers if they put out to him. I mean, and he's resigned from West Ham. What are your thoughts?
Well, I've not seen all the allegations. I know that the Times, working together with BBC on the Panorama programme, have put this out as a trailer fairly recently. I've not had a chance to properly read it because I've been downstairs working on the World Cup stuff. But, yeah, I mean, look, he's made the right decision in the sense of he's walked away from West Ham. That's absolutely what he should have done. Yeah. And look, if these allegations stack up against him, then absolutely. Then
he denies them. Important to stress, but I think it'd be good for your club. I really do. Good luck in the Championship, by the way, Mike. Mike Amstead, head of sport content for the Sun newspaper. Back in a mo. Stay where you are.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. In about 20 minutes, we're going to be taking your calls. 0344 499 1000. We still need to talk about two-tier policing. What do you think about the fact that two-tier care and all the police chiefs, they just stare us in the face and say there's no such thing as two-tier policing? You know, Henry Novak, I think he was the victim of two-tier policing, don't you? Wasn't that anti-white racism? They instantly believed Nikram Digwar, the Sikh, the man of colour, who said, oh, I've been racially abused. Oh, well, in that case, we'll arrest this guy and we'll ignore the fact that he's dying of stab wounds. Doesn't look like it, mate. Yeah, it does, actually. He's dying. So what do you think about two-tier policing, and what do you think about the fact that the authorities, the establishment, Keir Starmer, the police, just tell us we are wrong? There is no such thing in this country as two-tier policing. Really? Really? 0344 499 1000. What do you think about the fact that police are currently advertising for £75,000 a year diversity officers? The Met Police have spent £5 million on diversity in the last few years. Hampshire Police have spent £850,000 on DEI, diversity. Why don't they spend all this money on crime busting, catching bad guys? It's mad, don't you think? 0344 499 1000. What should we do to sort our police out? It's quite right that they should stand against racism, but they should stand against racism both ways, shouldn't they? 0344 499 1000. Your thoughts, please, on banknotes. Should the Bank of England be replacing Winston Churchill with bumblebees? 0344 499 1000. Why are they doing that? Does a serious country replace on its banknotes iconic historical figures, leaders like Winston Churchill, with small animals, furry animals and bumblebees? Are we a serious country to do that? 0344 499 1000. And J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States of America, what do you think when he said that the death of Henry Novak, the manner of that tragedy, was symptomatic of a civilization in decline, as in British civilization? What do you think about that? Or do you echo the thoughts of that cretin Ed Davey, that he shouldn't be intervening in British politics? Why not? He's not intervening, he's just giving his opinion. Doesn't he have the right to give us his opinion? 0344 499 1000. So get on the phone, let's talk. It's good to talk on Talk. In a little while, we'll be doing just that. Meanwhile, for the next 20 minutes or so, let's talk to former government special advisor, the excellent James Price. Hi, James.
Been too long, my friend. It's great to be with you.
It's good to have you on the show, as always. Yeah, I was just mentioning, you know, we're talking about the slipstream, the what's happened in the wake of that terrible tragedy with Henry Novak. A nation, a furious nation, saying essentially to our police forces all across the land, and indeed to two-tier care, you know, can we sort this out? This is mad. This is crazy. The police have gone from trying not to be racist against people of colour to essentially being racist towards white people. Can we sort this out? Two-tier policing, massive problem. They stare us in the face and say, no, 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 there's no such thing as two-tier policing in this country. Today we learn, James, that police all over the country are currently advertising for £75,000 a year diversity officers, while crime soars in their districts. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
The whole thing is pretty unbelievable, to be honest with you. You know, it was last year, you and your listeners and viewers will recall that the Prime Minister himself, Sir Keir Starmer, what a sentence that we even have to say that it's still him, by the way, that Keir Starmer and the rest of his cabinet and all the other hand-wringing MPs were telling us to go onto Netflix and watch a show about a fictional murder that never actually happened. That, again, some people say that the case that it was based on played fast and loose with some of the ethnicities involved. But we were all told this was very important to watch this fictional murder, this fictional program that never actually happened, and that it was important for us to have a national conversation about it. Well, we fast forward to an actual murder, a cold-blooded, brutal murder that highlighted not just the savagery and cruelty of some people that we've got, unfortunately, living amongst us, but also highlighted the iniquities and the failures of the very people who are supposed to keep us safe and to maintain the king's peace. And when some of us now want to have one of those national conversations about it, that's right, you're racist if you bring it up, it's cruel, you mustn't do it, Nigel Farage must not talk about it in the House of Commons, etc., etc., etc. I think this is absolutely ridiculous, and I think it's indicative of just how failed the state is in so many ways, that when we have an issue like this that is so cut and dry, I was going to say it's so black and white, but that probably wouldn't be the appropriate phrase, that's so cut and dry that it really does expose the failures and weaknesses at the heart of our government, and frankly other institutions like the police as well. We're all told you can't talk about it, which is why I think it's so refreshing that great friend of the United Kingdom, Vice President J.D. Vance, decided to weigh in on the case to make sure that it would get another load of media attention. I think that's doing a better service for the country overall and for keeping the rest of us safe than anything the government has managed to do.
I think, James, it's worse than being told we can't talk about it. They are staring us in the face. Two-tier Keir, various police chiefs, the police chief, the chief constable of Hampshire, a guy called Alexis Boone, actually said, I don't recognise the term two-tier policing, to which I thought, well, let's fire this guy and find someone who does. They stare us in the face and they say, this two-tier policing of which you complain, of which you speak, it does not exist. It damn well does. It is no way to deal with a profound problem by pretending that it doesn't exist. That is incendiary. It's going to lead to trouble, I think.
Absolutely right. The great David Shipley, I think, writing in The Spectator, has talked about this, has found all the various documents where the police are told that they're supposed to treat people differently in different ways. There is a really nasty little unaccountable body called the Sentencing Council. And the Sentencing Council gets involved when you've got legislation at one side of things and judges then enacting that legislation for all kinds of crimes. The Sentencing Council will give different guidelines to judges that basically water down sentences from wrongdoers. And in particular, the Sentencing Council has spent a long time saying you should take time away from sentences if people are from ethnic minorities. And this was so bad and so egregious that the Home Secretary herself, Shabana Mahmood, threatened proper primary legislation through Parliament, to her credit, saying, if you don't back down on this stuff, I will legislate to end this. Because she, as a brown Muslim woman, good on her, stood up and said it is not right that the law of the land should treat people from different races and different religious backgrounds, etc., differently, purely because of that. So we know that the two-tier stuff exists all up and down the system, and it might be, as you said earlier on, Kev, that it comes from a nice place because of failings in the past, and we've all seen horrible issues like that, and we don't want any of that stuff to happen. But I think it's fair to say that the experiment of affirmative action or positive discrimination or whatever you want to call it has gone a little far now, and the pendulum should settle in an area where all of us are treated exactly the same based on our skin colour and our race and our sex and anything else, and treated differently only by our actions and by the content of our character.
There's a guy called Paul Birch. He was a distinguished police officer of 24 years' service. He was a counter-terrorism expert. Gave a big interview to the Mail on Sunday yesterday, chronicling the moment when he realised he had to quit the force. He had been forced, along with fellow fed-up officers, to attend the Met Police's mandatory course, on anti-racism training. And the moment he realised that it was time to leave was when he was sitting there in this lecture room, bored to tears, and he suddenly heard the lecturer say, the thing is, slavery is such a terrible thing and we still haven't learned, and Windrush, we gathered up these poor Caribbean immigrants and we forced them onto the Windrush ships and we forced them to come to Britain to work for this country after the war. That's just a lie. So not only are our cops being brainwashed by constant anti-racism initiatives, they're also being brainwashed by outright lies. I mean, it gets worse, doesn't it?
I hadn't heard that. That is really quite something. And this is kind of the problem, I suppose, that you've got with these people only care about power. They never care about truth or even fixing any of the problems, actually, because to spread a lie like that only further drives wedges between people. If you want to know the historical truth, it's the fact that after the war, we actually had a very different conception about citizenship than they do, say, in America or in France, because you had the empire turn into the Commonwealth, and everybody was sort of assumed that they could move around at will to some extent, which is why there were various problems and things like that. And actually, the Labour government of Clement Attlee after the war, there's a lot of correspondence out there that they were desperate to stop these people from coming over from places like, I suppose, initially Jamaica with the Empire Windrush as a specific example. There's all this correspondence between ministers trying to work out if there was a way that we could stop these people coming over, because they were worried about various tensions. They were worried, frankly, that these guys would be willing to work for less money and that it would dampen domestic working class wages, which, by the way, is what happened when we opened the floodgates to migrants from the European Union and from the Boris wave, and has always happened, by the way, which is why being pro-mass immigration never used to be a left-wing cause. But obviously the commies that you've got on the left now don't actually care about working people because they get all their money from the taxpayer, so it doesn't matter anymore. But that kind of stuff you're describing there, Kev, is horrendous, because it is taking our history, of which we should be incredibly proud, and making us ashamed of it. Why should we be proud of our history on this point? Well, because Britain was the first nation, the first empire, if you want to take it in those terms, in all of human history that said that slavery was wrong. Not just said that it was wrong, but even during the midst of fighting Napoleon in an existential struggle for our survival, spent the lives of lots of brave young men in the Royal Navy, lots of money, to end the slave trade. The Bible, for all the good things in it, never said that you shouldn't have slavery, certainly not in the Old Testament. The Quran doesn't say it, no other religious text does it, but it was a couple of Christians in Britain who used those texts in the Bible, realised that slavery was wrong decades and decades before the Americans had their civil war about it, and 100+ years in some places still have it now. We should be so proud that we led the world in the abolition of slavery, and instead we're taught from school all the way apparently to senior policing levels that we should be ashamed of our history. Enough.
Yeah, hence the Bank of England replaces Winston Churchill on our banknotes with bumblebees, and on it goes.
It's just crazy.
I know. Let's cover a couple of other stories, though, James. Your thoughts? I thought this statistic was just extraordinary. Last year in England, 16,000 NH, 16,000, that's more than 300 a week. 16,000 NHS patients in England died last year after long waits in A&E. And Keir Starmer is shouting and crowing about what a wonderful job Labour is doing with the NHS. It's part of his comeback campaign. We've got waiting lists down. 16,000 died after long waits in A&E. Don't you think that is a shocking statistic?
It's absolutely shocking. It's only as shocking, though, as the state of the NHS and under this Labour Party, who said they were going to go and do wonderful things about it. Without going into too many details, I've had some brushes with family members in the NHS in recent weeks. It's an absolute state, and it's not just about the money. It's not far from being about the money, because we spend huge amounts. People who may remember, almost exactly 10 years ago, there was the Brexit campaign, and the Vote Leave team said, we send £350 million a week to the European Union, let's spend on the NHS instead. Well, Theresa May did increase weekly spending to the NHS by even more than that. Never got any credit for it because they didn't sell this idea, right? And things are still not working because money is not the only solution. We have to have a different system. It's not to criticise the individual doctors, certainly not to criticise the vast majority of individual nurses or anybody else who works in the system, but the system itself leads to totally unacceptable conditions and totally unacceptable outcomes that you've got there. And I hope to God that we can stop making this such a political hot potato, throwing this around at each other, and start to actually get some solutions. But of course, our last health secretary, Wes Streeting, who I thought was all right by and large, quit so that he could try and get Keir Starmer's job, and is now spending all of his time doing videos about Palestine because that's what the Labour base cares about, not the NHS anymore.
Exactly right. Now, I know this is a stretch, but imagine I'm a Labour MP, a left-wing Labour MP. This is what I would say. It is now clear that the vast majority of people in Britain realise that Brexit was a terrible mistake and they want to rejoin the EU. Polls have now revealed over the weekend that the opposite is true. But Labour won't stop lying to us about that truth. The truth is that people are very content with being out of that sclerotic organisation, the European Union, and yet Labour keep telling us that we want to go back. It's not true, is it?
That's fantastic news, isn't it? That even though we have yet to see most of the benefits that Britain could see from being outside the European Union, people are savvy enough, as they always are, to look across that channel and see that the continent is even more of a mess than we managed to be right now. The Germans, as far as I last looked, they're still inside the EU. Their economy is in a much worse condition than even Labour's Britain is. Ditto with France, ditto lots of other places. And you want to get tied, exactly as you say, to a dying continent, frankly, which breaks my heart, right? I don't think any of us who are pro leaving the European Union should be pro the destruction of Europe as a concept. I feel European in that kind of sense, that we have a shared inheritance from ancient Greece and from Rome, and the kind of shared Christendom and all that kind of wonderful stuff that our continent has produced. But you see them going around banning AI, that's going to be the one thing that probably could sort out our economy and our healthcare service and all these things, and falling further behind the Chinese and the Americans. Great to be out of it. But again, Kev, Labour have stopped talking to the country. They're only talking to a diminishing number of their own hardcore activist members who have ideas that are totally out of whack with what any sane person and some of the mad people listening and watching your show right now.
Yeah, and they continue, as we were just discussing, Labour two-tier Keir gaslights us about two-tier policing. Doesn't exist. Absolutely doesn't exist. Millions of you think it does. You're wrong. I'm the Prime Minister, and you're wrong. So they gaslight us about this. They also gaslight us about Ed Miliband's madness, his crazy nut zero lunacy. Starmer, just before I went away a couple of weeks ago, he was out there saying, it is now clear that renewables are the future. This is the energy policy that will take us into the new blah, 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 blah. It's just crap. It's utter crap. Ed Miliband's nut zero policies are ruining the economy, and Gary Smith, the General Secretary of the GMB Union, major trades union figure, agrees with you, me, Tories, Reform UK, that Ed Miliband's policies, in his words, are economic madness, and he says they are driving his members, trade unionists, towards Reform UK. So it isn't just people of the right who realise Ed Miliband's policies are deranged, are insane, are pernicious and damaging to our economy. Sensible figures from the left, like Gary Smith, from a union that helps to fund the Labour Party, say that too. But they won't listen, will they? They'll continue to tell us that renewables are the future and that Ed Miliband is taking us into a bold new age where Britain won't need fossil fuels. It's just extraordinary to watch, isn't it?
It's completely crackers. Look, I just come back from a trip in California, which everyone assumes, full of hippies and movie stars and crackheads, and of course that's all true.
I used to live there, that's true.
Right. And sometimes it's all the same person. But you also, when you drive from the kind of the cities on the coast and you drive towards places like Yosemite and Sequoia and those lovely national parks, you drive through hour after hour of roads going through basically deserts with nothing in them but oil derricks. And you've got huge amounts of oil being pumped still today, even in the Socialist Republic of California, because those guys know that even if you want to do all the mad stuff, you've got to be able to keep the lights on or there will be complete revolution going on. And yet we seem to have Ed Miliband who doesn't understand that. Maybe it's because the party to his left, who really ought to be out gazumping him on environmental issues, namely the Green Party, whom some people might look and go, well, I like clean rivers, I like the cute little animals, I like our green and pleasant land, maybe I'll vote Green. Well, look at them. The Green Party doesn't give a damn about the environment anymore, they just want to get lists of Jews and things like that these days. Yeah. So Ed Miliband gets to fill all the mad space to the left, and everybody else with some level of sanity comes along. By the way, you don't have to listen to me on this. Listen to Bill Gates, of all people, who came out less than a year ago saying, by the way, everyone, actually, climate change not going to destroy the world. Still quite serious, but we've got all the technological solutions we need to fix it, of which renewables will be a part, of which nuclear will be a part, of which other cool, exciting technologies that we don't know a lot about yet will be a part. But the world's not going to end. Greta, you can go back to school. Ed Miliband, you should probably go back to school as well.
You're right about California and the oil business. Of course, before it was a movie town, Los Angeles was an oil town, and those derricks all around the city still exist. And right in the middle of the town on Pico Boulevard, there is still a massive, fully functioning oil well. So, as you say, not everyone in California is insane, but Ed Miliband is. James, fantastic to have you back on the show. Come on again very soon. That was the brilliant James Price, former government special advisor. We're going to take some calls next, and then after that, Kinsey Schofield on the latest news from Planet Royal. All of that still to come, so you better stay tuned.
We are going to remove all forms of DEI from policing. We will also, and we're the only, look, the Labour Party have not committed to this, the Tory Party have not committed to this. Reform are also taking the view that we would immediately ensure that nobody gets to carry deadly weapons on our streets unless you're law enforcement. So I don't care what religion you are. I don't care how ceremonial, in quotes, your dagger is.
So you would stop the
There will be no religious exemption.
Okay. So you would stop the Karapan being carried.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. As I was saying earlier, we can see it from Talk Towers here. We're up on the 17th floor. There's this massive fire, massive amount of black smoke filling the sky just to the east of us. We think in the Bermondsey area. Indeed, I can tell you that, as I say, the fire service here confirming that a huge fire has erupted in London, prompting response from 15 fire engines. Smoke can be seen billowing out from a building on Landman Way in Bermondsey, close to a major train line. 15 fire engines and around 100 firefighters have been called to the scene. The London Fire Brigade have told the public to please avoid the area while the incident is going on. We don't know exactly what's on fire, but boy, oh boy, that is a big plume of smoke. Really big, dark black as well. So some building or with something in it, I would imagine, is on fire, and it's big. If we do find out exactly what that fire is all about, of course, I'll let you know. In the meantime, let's go to the phones. Let's talk to Dave in Essex. Hello, Dave. You want to talk about Winston Churchill?
Hello, Kev. Yes, indeed, I do. If Winston Churchill is looking down, he would be ashamed to be on a banknote. He'd be ashamed, thoroughly ashamed.
Yeah. Do you think he wouldn't want to be on our banknotes anymore?
No, not now. None of our heroes, none of the men who've achieved. It appears that Starmer hates anyone that's achieved, anyone that's done anything in their life. He just doesn't like the British. An opinion of him, he is pond life, and he has been doused in raw sewage, and the suit he wears smells. It doesn't even belong to him.
I mean, you're talking allegorically there, metaphorically, not literally, obviously, but I think I know what you mean. He's a globalist, isn't he? I mean, these socialists, they don't like nation, they don't like borders, they don't like notions of Britishness. That's what this is all about, don't you think?
Yes, well, a good old friend of him, Stalin, he didn't mind us supplying his goods in the Murmansk run, did he?
Oh, no, I mean, you know, there's always... pragmatism always plays its part. But, I mean, don't you think, Dave, that a serious nation does not replace on its banknotes great iconic historical figures like Winston Churchill, like Jane Austen, like the painter Turner? They don't replace these people with furry little animals and bumblebees, do they?
Kevin, it grieves me. It grieves me to watch. They're killing our wildlife day by day with pesticides, OK, and GM
yeah, that's a good point.
GM foods, and they want to put it on the banknote.
That's a very good point.
That's the only way we're going to see it.
I'll tell you what else kills wildlife, kills birds, like there's no tomorrow. That's those windmills that Ed Miliband's put up all over the country. They kill thousands of birds. They are bird killers. So, yeah, whilst we're killing them with our windmills and our pesticides, we're going to celebrate them on our banknotes. Kind of hypocritical, don't you think?
Well, it's going to be the only way we're going to see them. Our children will never see them.
I think you're right. I shouldn't laugh, but if you didn't laugh, Dave, you'd cry, wouldn't you? Dave, really good to talk to you. That's Dave in Essex. What do you think? Again, let me know what you think about Churchill being removed from our banknotes and replaced by bumblebees. So's Jane Austen, Turner, all these iconic historical figures from our glorious past are being replaced on our banknotes, fivers, tenors, 20s, by furry little animals and bumblebees. What do you think about that? 0344 499 1000. Let's take another call. Let's talk to Robert in Hertfordshire. Hello, Robert.
Hi, Kev. Nice to see you back.
Thank you.
Just on your last point, before I go on to my own point, don't worry about the banknote because it'll be euro soon. We'll be on euro. So it won't be a British banknote.
You want to know something, Robert? You probably do know this, but the only good thing about Gordon Brown was he was the one who persuaded or stood against Tony Blair and Peter Mandelson in their crazed bid for us to join, obviously be a part of the EU, but to take on euros, to replace our currency with euros. Gordon Brown stood against that. All credit to him. But you're right now, they want to do it again, don't they?
Yeah, can I just quickly go on to my point?
Yeah, go on. Sorry, I forgot about that. Yeah, go on.
That's all right. We're going, everybody's going on about two-tier policing.
Yep.
And two-tier justice. There's another one. How about two-tier taking the knee? Why shouldn't the England football team, because I didn't watch them Saturday, and I don't think I'll watch them until they start taking the knee.
Are they still taking the knee?
Well, they're not.
I don't think England are. Yeah, some league teams still do it. I'm not sure England do anymore. But you're right. I mean, since we went into this orgy of knee taking for, what was it, 2-3 seasons, or at least 2 seasons after, certainly for at least a season after George Floyd's sad death, why don't they take the knee for Henry Novak? I mean, George Floyd's last words were, "I can't breathe." By a sinister coincidence, Henry Novak's last words were, "I can't breathe." Why don't our footballers take the knee for Henry Novak? What do you reckon?
Well, yeah, but I'll tell you what, your colleague, Andre Walker, he started this off, and fair play to him.
Yeah.
Within a minute of his programme, obviously you weren't watching it where you was, he stood up on the desk. Ash couldn't do it, obviously, because they didn't have scaffolding handy.
Yeah.
But Andre...
So did Andre take the knee on the desk?
he took the knee on the desk. And the next day, I made my wife take a photograph of me, and I put it on Facebook of me taking the knee.
For Henry Novak, yeah, I like quite... See, Nigel Farage said, Robert, and I've got some sympathy with what he said. He said that he certainly will bow his head in respect for the memory of Henry Novak, but he said, I don't take the knee for anyone.
Yeah, but George Floyd's murder, it was bad, it was murder, but it's a lot... George Floyd was a lot different to Henry Novak, right? But none of them deserved to die, but that was politicised. And that was all over the world with George.
Well, I mean, you say that there were no similarities, and certainly, American culture and British culture are very different, and policing in both our countries are very different. But both of them did die due to a tragic police mistake, didn't they?
Yes, but one of them was about 17 stone, a known criminal. He was high on ketamine, and...
I think it's fentanyl, actually.
Sorry?
I think it was fentanyl. The drug he was on. But yeah, I mean, I do think there are similarities, but I take your point. Why aren't we taking the knee for Henry Novak? Very good question, Robert, but I think we know the answer, don't we? Robert, really good call. Thanks for ringing. That's Robert in Hertfordshire. Let's go to break, and after the break, we're going to go live to the west coast of the United States of America to talk to the great Kinsey Schofield, our royal expert, about the latest goings-on on Planet Royal. That next. Stick around.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. As I say, let's go straight over to our royal expert, our royal guru, the great Kinsey Schofield, host of Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered. Hi, Kins.
Hi, Kev. Good to see you.
Good to have you back on the show. Good to have me back on the show, perhaps. I'm not sure the audience agree with that, but I'm glad to be back anyway. Well, let's talk about Harry and Meghan. I think we saw Peter Phillips, Princess Anne's son, getting married at the weekend. Massive turnout. All the royals, the King, the Queen, of course, William, Kate, etc. Also, significantly, Princess Bea and Princess Eugenie, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's kids, controversially, they were there as well. But I thought I looked at all of that panorama, all the people, all the royals, all the great and the good there at that wedding, and Harry and Meghan's absence were absolutely conspicuous by their absence. Harry trying to put it around that he decided to steer clear of that. No, that's not true. He wasn't invited. Nothing says that Harry and Meghan are pariahs, are now banished from royal circles, more than what we saw at the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, my sources are telling me that his feelings were hurt by the idea of all of the cousins together, laughing, joking, remembering Queen Elizabeth, remembering Prince Philip, and he felt excluded from that. He mentioned something similar at the end of the Netflix series too, that sometimes he does miss getting together with the family and like the laughter in the hallways during the holidays and things like that. The cousins chasing each other up and down the stairs. So I do think that this is a case where he feels excluded and he's probably sitting back and realizing that he made a mistake. And I've heard sources say that Peter Phillips hasn't spoken to Harry in years. So why would he be invited to this wedding? Harry would be a distraction. It would be awkward because he hasn't talked to his cousin in so long. So anyone trying to make the point that this was Harry's decision has lost the plot.
Yeah, not that at all. And of course, had, on the off chance that Harry and Meghan had turned up or were invited and said that they would attend, William and Catherine would not attend. I mean, that is how bad this division, this split between the two brothers is. I mean, William, now I think we're beginning to realise, we're beginning to be aware of just how bitter this split is, because we now learn that Harry and Meghan had kept up the rent on Frogmore Cottage, which they spent £2.4 million renovating in Windsor Great Park near Windsor Castle during the good old days when they were still part of the royal fold. And they carried on paying their rent. And their idea was that this place, Frogmore Cottage, would continue to be their British bolt hole whenever they came back, either individually or together or with the family. The King took one look at Spare, Harry's nasty little biography, and said, no, no, no. And he essentially evicted Harry and said, you're not having this cottage anymore. And apparently Harry and Meghan still seethe over this to this day.
Well, Harry's been looking at real estate over here for the last few years. Harry would like to have a hub here in the UK. So, yeah, he felt like that caught him off guard. Actions have consequences. Normal people recognize that. Normal people would be concerned about releasing such a nasty tribute to his brother's bald head and his frozen Todger. But yeah, actions have consequences. I do think that Harry wants a home here. Meghan is less enthusiastic about it, but I don't think she's necessarily going to be invited when he finds one.
Exactly right. And, you know, if they did retain Frogmore Cottage, I wonder if Meghan would ever go there anyway.
No, I don't think she would. I don't think we're going to see her next month for the Invictus preview. It's my understanding that Harry has a packed schedule that will annoy the working royals because he's going to be in the media's face for an entire week with multiple charity appearances, faux royal engagements is what we would call them, because he's trying to reestablish himself in the UK because he realizes that things aren't necessarily working out for him in California the way that he wanted things to.
Indeed. Now, he has retained, we're told, a certain closeness with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and Fergie's kids, their daughters, Princess Bea and Princess Eugenie, his cousins. And there was a lot of talk about their presence at this wedding, at Peter Phillips's wedding, as if this was that they're still a part of the royal fold, despite the growing controversy over their alleged involvement in their parents' nefarious business activities, particularly as he was then Prince Andrew, and that Eugenie, I think it was, accompanied him on some of these weird Middle Eastern business trips that he went on. Prince William, this is why it's interesting that Bea and Eugenie were at Peter Phillips's wedding. Prince William, when the furore first started over Bea and Eugenie's alleged involvement in Andrew's business affairs, Prince William kindly offered them the chance to clear their name by sending in ethical accountants to go through their business affairs or their finances to prove that they were not in any way, or they did not in any way benefit from Andrew's underhand business activities, and they declined that offer, which I think says a lot. So William, I think, is well, we read that he's furious with both of them. So it's interesting that they were there at the same wedding. I wonder if Bea and Eugenie and William had a chat.
Well, I doubt it. I mean, I do think that Prince William's issue is, please don't leave these problems for me. Yes, you inherited a lot of problems to King Charles. That wasn't necessarily fair, but have the courtesy to not do the same to me. And that's why he wants to nip the Beatrice and Eugenie finance issue in the bud. I mean, that's even with the, do we think Prince William, as King William, is going to pay for Beatrice and Eugenie to live in homes in Kensington Palace or St. James Palace? No. So I just don't think he wants to inherit this problem. But when it comes to his cousins, he loves his cousins. He loves them on a personal level. He grew up with them. I just think that he thinks it's unfair that he might have to deal with any sort of repercussions that the king doesn't deal with. And look at what happened to the king a few years into his reign. He's forced to deal with Andrew Mountbatten Windsor in a way that makes him uncomfortable as well. But does Prince William sit around furious at stuff all the time? I've not seen that. I see so many headlines about how angry and mad Prince William is. I've not seen him break a dog bowl yet.
Yeah, he seems to be always smiling to me, but perhaps that's for the public. Have you been following? What do you make of the growing controversy around royal finances, their properties, their rental agreements, and the fact that both Prince Edward and Sophie and indeed Andrew, they get these properties, these magnificent properties to live in at peppercorn rents, Andrew included when he was in Royal Lodge in Windsor Great Park, and we now learn that they sublet buildings on their estates. So they pay a peppercorn rent and then they sublet buildings on their estates to take the rent themselves. And the people of this country are not happy about this. It looks as if the royals may have to, raise their game when it comes to their rental and financial arrangements.
Well, it's my understanding, whether it's true or not, that the rent that was collected went to the upkeep of the building. Did it go to that? Did it go to horse racing? I don't know what the honest answer is, but the official response was that it went into the upkeeping of the building. I mean, if you really sit back and think about it, when we were watching Cinderella or Snow White, did we really think that the prince or the princess paid the rent on the castle? I always assumed they got these things for free. I think what the public wants is transparency. They want a clearer picture of how much the royal family is generating and where is that money going, and if and like they need to justify why anyone is contributing to them financially. Really, the world is changing. I mean, we had a similar conversation years ago when the Queen said, you know what, you're right, I'm going to start paying taxes. So it's okay to have these discussions, and a lot of times there's a positive evolution. That's the outcome.
Yeah, I think you're right. Andrew Lowney, you know, of course, the brilliant royal author, the author of Entitled, The Decline and Fall of the House of York, Andy and Fergie, and Norman Baker, former minister of this country, had a big article in one of the Sunday papers here yesterday saying that unless the royal family, unless the king organises this, gets all of this in order and shows the public that the members of his family pay proper rents for their palatial properties, unless he does something about that they fear that it will really endanger the future of the royal family.
I think that that's I think that that's fair. However, I'm already seeing Prince William make so many conscious choices around this topic that it's horrible to say out loud, but I don't know how much longer King Charles is going to have to make some of these drastic changes. Whereas Prince William is selling off parts of the Duchy of Cornwall because, you know, he's trying to utilize that money to create homeless shelters, and he's using these spaces to create homeless shelters. I think Prince William is much further ahead in the game than potentially King Charles is when it comes to these discussions and concerns.
That's really, really good point. I agree with you. I think that William sees the future for the royal family has to be more about transparency, less about getting sweetheart deals that the public don't know about, and more about paying their way and, as you say, using their money in a more philanthropic way. I think King Charles, a creature of the past, doesn't quite see this. So last question, really. Do you think that William will herald in a different age, a different type of royalty? Because unless he does, I think they could be in trouble.
I do, and I think he's already working to develop that, and I don't think it's an insult to his father. I just think he's more keenly aware of what the public wants and what the public is demanding.
Yeah, I agree. Kinsey, really good to hook up with you again. Great to have you on the show again, and we'll talk again very soon. Thank you very much. The brilliant Kinsey Schofield there. Next up, we're going to go to break now. We'll take some more of your calls, and don't forget Peter Cardwell will be in the not-too-distant future to tell you what he's got lined up for your entertainment, for your delectation from 7 p.m. until 10 p.m. So there's still 10 minutes to go, but we're going to pack them out with fascinating stuff. So stay tuned. Stay exactly where you are.
are going to remove all forms of DEI from policing. We will also, and we're the only, look, the Labour Party have not committed to this, the Tory Party have not committed to this. Reform are also taking the view that we would immediately ensure that nobody gets to carry deadly weapons on our streets unless you're law enforcement. So I don't care what religion you are. I don't care how ceremonial, in quotes, your dagger is.
So you would
not get to carry. There will be no religious exemption.
Okay, so you would stop the Kerapan being carried.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's gonna go to the phones in just a second. Peter Carb will be in very soon. But first, let's read a few of your texts and messages that you were kind enough to send in. This is from Sean. I liked this one. Hi, Kev. I thought your holiday was going to help you calm down. Yeah, I thought it was as well, but it didn't work. Actually, while I was on holiday, I was like this volcanic mass of human rage, as my wife kept pointing out. You know, I'm not cut out to calm down. I'm always furious about something. This is Margaret. Taking Sir Winston Churchill off our banknotes is just not on. They are throwing our greatest Brit. Yes, I think he was voted the greatest Briton in the bin. Do the people of this country have to accept this woke stuff? No, we don't. We don't, but we don't seem to be able to stop it, Margaret. This is Testy on Tyneside. He says, £75,000 salary for police diversity officers. You could hire 3 junior cops for that. Disgusting. Overly political waste. Really good point, Testy. You could get 3 coppers could be hired for 1 diversity officer's salary. And they could go out and, I don't know, call me, you know, fight crime, arrest the bad guys, that kind of thing. £75,000 a year for police diversity officers. When will they ever learn? This is Gary. I bet Labour will be cast into the same dustbin as the Conservatives at the next general election. What say you? Yeah, I think you're right. If we ever make it to, was it 29, is it, when we're supposed to have the next election? We'll be in a right old state by then, but I do think that'll be the death of Labour, probably forever. They are destroying their future. This is from Dan in Hampshire, referring to what me and Samara were talking about earlier. Hi, Kevin, Samara. I was in A&E. This is, you know, about 16,000 people dying in A&E after long waits. This is from Dan. I was in A&E for 19 hours at the weekend before being admitted. So long before being admitted that I actually took on a secondary nerve issue in my leg. Waiting that long, confirmed by neurology. So he developed a new condition while he was waiting in A&E. Not funny, but as I keep saying, if you didn't laugh, you'd cry. Thanks, Dan. Thanks. Very good message. Peter G. 2-tier policing. The UK has been taken over by the loony left Liberals. How can they put their flawed ideology above safety, fairness and not ripping the public off to pay anyone that deserves nothing? Terry says, I was watching a documentary at the weekend on London. Did you know that it was a certain Winston Churchill who helped push for one of the first large mosques in London? Does that sound like a racist to you? No, it doesn't, Terry. I mean, Winston Churchill was a man of his time, but was he a racist? I don't think so. This is from Keith in Nottingham. Hi, Kev. The list of woke renaming our historical stuff also includes the renaming of pubs. Well, those that are left the pubs that are left, that is. Yeah, good point. Good point. Let's go to the phones. Let's talk to Grace in London. Hi, Grace.
Hi, I hope you had a good holiday.
I did. Thank you very much, Grace. Yes, I did. Yeah, I'm very pleased to be back, I think.
I was not massively impressed with David Lammy's answers yesterday in interviews. I think he's right because, as you said, the killer was a British citizen, so he's right to criticise J.D. Vance pinning it all on migration. But I think that David Lammy should have been clearer that actually people should be treated the same by police. And also, I don't think that the law should be allowing for people to carry dangerous weapons. It's not, apparently, even necessary for Sikhism to carry a kirpan that's sharp. Apparently, you can carry a tiny blunt.
Yeah, I was going to say that, Grace. So, you know, can't we compromise here by saying, by all means, carry, if it's a ceremonial dagger, the kirpan, why does the blade have to be lethally sharp metal? Why can't it be plastic or something?
Apparently, according to Sikhism, so far as I've read, though I'm not an expert, it doesn't have to be sharp, but the law is still allowing it. So I don't really understand that. Obviously, some of us Christians wear execution devices around our necks, but they're only normally about a centimetre in size. You know, the cross is quite a different thing because it's not about fighting defensively. You know, Jesus died for us, and we're not kind of battling against others in the way that I see some people in our country, and I'm not talking about Sikhs specifically, but some people kind of want to fight territorially, and that's actually quite different from the historic ideology that we had in this country. And just kind
I'll tell you what, Grace, I'll tell you what I think. What is sad about the Henry Novak case or the Vikram Digwar case is the Sikh community. I think our models of integration, they've retained their own culture, but they're very much British. And they, until the horror of Vikram Digwar, they were exemplary. They were an exemplary community. So it's sad that this terrible murder of Henry Novak by this nasty piece of work, Vikram Digwar, has spoiled that reputation of the Sikhs. But I don't believe that Sikhs are not British. They are part of our culture, they're part of our community, and until Digwar have been an exemplary part of our community, which is sad. Listen, Grace, I've got to go, but it's always good to talk to you. Thank you very much for another excellent call. That's Grace in London. Here he is. You've been away, Peter Cardwell, so have I.
Yes, not on the same romantic break, it must be said. Did you have a nice holiday, Kev?
I very much did. Yourself?
Good, yes, lovely, thanks.